Good morning. It is 6:07. It's Wednesday, November 20th, 2019. Welcome to Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. I'm here with Chris Conway this morning. It is 37 degrees and overcast. Chris will be back with all the weather shortly. Our top stories this morning: a sports coach in Scarsdale Catholic School named in the sex abuse cases that are being reported. In Mount Vernon, the mayor there proposes a $116 million budget that would raise city taxes 1.3%. We'll be talking with the mayor-elect at 8:35 today. The Haldane girls basketball coach takes leave of absence after arrest. A lot of coach stuff today. Meanwhile, our kicker here in New Rochelle, parents packed the New Rochelle School Board meeting to discuss the reassigned football coach, complain about the school board. No surprise there with what's been going on, but nobody really knows the details yet, including the group of people that were complaining. We'll be back with those stories in just a moment. First, let's go to the weather with Chris Conway. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Bob. Right now it is 37 degrees along the Sound Shore. Today the temperatures will get up to about the mid-40s. There may be some sprinkles, maybe even a flurry or two, but nothing to worry about. Tonight, clear and cool, temperatures in the mid-30s. Tomorrow, best day of the week, mostly sunny, seasonable weather, highs around 50. And Friday, mostly cloudy, a few light showers or sprinkles. The high will be in the mid-50s. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let's get to those top stories right now as we come up on 6:10. Pardon me. A former youth sports coach is accused of molesting a student at Immaculate Heart of Mary School in Scarsdale in a Child Victims Act case filed earlier this month. This in Lohud today. Edwin Gaynor of Ossining was accused of fondling one David Fox and possibly others during gym class early in the 60s, my goodness, according to a case filed in Westchester County Civil Court. The suit also accuses the Archdiocese of New York that it knew about the abuse and instead of dealing with the issue, moved Gaynor to other schools. No other schools, though, are mentioned in the lawsuit. The latest suit is one of more than 1,000 cases filed under the New York Child Victims Act, a law which allows people to sue for abuse regardless of the statute of limitations. Fox, who now lives in Los Angeles, claims to have been abused between the ages of 8 and 11 years. Mount Vernon Mayor Andre Wallace has proposed a $116 million city budget for 2020. It would raise taxes just under 1.3%, under, of course, the tax cap system. This in Lohud this morning. The average city homeowner with a house assessed at $10,000 would pay $4,088 in city taxes in 2020, up $52 from this year. Wallace, the former city council president who has been mayor since the summer, will not be in office when the new budget goes into effect. He lost the election to Sean Patterson Howard, who takes office on January 1. Now, as they plan for the transition, Wallace's budget does include something Patterson Howard would want: the first funding for a mayor's chief of staff in several years for $110,000, but it would eliminate the $80,000 position of special assistant to the mayor. And that's something Sean Patterson Howard has talked about on this air. And she will be with us at 8:35 today to talk about that, and also to discuss the issue of the transplanting of indigent people to her city with only 1 year's worth of financing. This season, Haldane High School girls basketball program is pursuing its 7th consecutive Section 1 championship, but the Blue Devils are going to do so without the man who led them to Class C supremacy. This in LoHud today. Tyrone Seawright has taken a leave of absence as the head coach after he was arrested in October on fraud charges stemming from his former job as a bus driver for the MTA. In a letter on November 6th to parents and players in the school's program, Haldane Athletic Director Chris Salem said he and Superintendent of Schools Philip Benante met with Seawright and had a constructive conversation, and they agreed that it was the best interest of both coach and the school for him to take a leave of absence. Speaking of coaches and municipalities, things continue to be at a a fever pitch, you could say, here in New Rochelle. Another school board meeting was held this previous evening, last night, coming on the heels of a controversial reassignment of football coach Louis DiRienzo. This in News 12, Talk of the Sound, LoHud, everybody covered it yesterday. The saga surrounding the reassignment of the man known as Coach D continued at the packed meeting, where parents got insight into what the future holds. Since Thursday, DiRienzo has not been able to teach or coach the football team, while School Superintendent Dr. Laura Fejo says he violated school policy, but because of confidentiality agreements, she cannot yet say what he did. Now, Coach D's supporters say he helped a student in distress leave school grounds with her parent. The district hasn't confirmed that as the reason. Attendees learned that there's no end in sight for the investigation into the coach, as large numbers of disgruntled parents were upset by the news, yelling at Fejo, calling on her to resign. While parents and students have held a number of protests since Fejo's decision was announced, saying it couldn't have come at a worse time, with the football team battling for state title amid an undefeated season. And the back and forth, by the way, has captured the attention of retired New York Giants running back Tiki Barber, who tweeted, "Coach DiRienzo is so important to his team and students. Let common sense prevail." Now, let common sense prevail for who, Tiki? Do you really know what's going on? Do we know why he was suspended? And this is commentary. One of the issues that both sides have here is that none of us know what the details are. Try though we might, speculate though we might, know what we might. And the school has to explain why it did what it did. The superintendent does, to the extent that confidentiality laws will permit it. And if indeed protocols were broken, the groups of people complaining have to be sure they don't devolve into a mob. Major changes to minor league baseball may benefit the Rockland Boulders. And actually, this is a sub-story of a much larger story that has been making news. And it's a sports story, but it also is a story about America and what our pastimes are. Major League Baseball, in an effort to save money and streamline their processes, is considering consolidating baseball teams and taking out 42 different teams, Chris. 42 teams, some of them classic time immemorial baseball teams like the Chattanooga Lookouts. And people know about the Louisville Redbirds and some of these other places, the Durham Bills. The Chattanooga Lookouts have been there for 100 years. Several other teams have been there for 100 years. Why? Of course, in a system that already pays its players garbage, pays them less than the minimum wage, and even if they get up to AAA, they barely make a living. In fact, they have to live in subsidized housing by the team. It's the only sport, well, of the major sports that have minor leagues that treat their players so badly. At any rate, though, here's the upside. Independent baseball, that's baseball that is not affiliated with the major leagues, but professional nonetheless, for teams that can afford it, like the Rockland Boulders, that have a following and a local economy. It could be good news. We could get a lot better players here for the Boulders, and it could really be a boon to independent baseball. Not so good for the players, though, because it will take even more teams out, and in effect, take away some of the salary structure, even for those that play for our Boulders. So we shall see. That is a sports story, but it really makes the economic news. And we go now to more news. Here is Chris Conway. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. Westchester considers big pay hikes. That's, yes.
I want in.
No, this is actually for politicians, not for radio talk shows.
No, but I'm considering. I'm running. I'm running next. People better be careful because I'm going to run.
I would love to see that.
I'm actually. There's a part. I'm really considering it.
Really?
We'll talk about it later. Go ahead.
Westchester County lawmakers defended a slew of planned raises for themselves, county department heads, and other non-union staff that were first disclosed publicly on Monday. Lawmakers are planning to boost their pay to $75,000 from $49,200 a year, a 52% increase. And they're also expected to approve a slew of other raises that include 28% increases for many commissioners as part of the 2020 budget process. Commissioners would see their pay move to as much as $195,000 next year. Well, no wonder you're considering running. From today's rate of $156,000.
It's a landslide.
And some positions in the medical arena will get hikes of $70,000 or more by 2020. Legislature Chairman Ben Boykin from White Plains said the increase for lawmakers was a way to attract people to run for office who may not have other substantial income. Now,
they're talking to me. How does this ring, Chris? County Legislator Bob.
I don't want to say I like it.
Shaking your boots, Terry Clements. Go ahead.
County Executive George Latimer did not propose an increase to his $185.
I'm going to ask him about that Monday. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to ask him about that Monday because, we like George here, but that's kind of pretty transparent. Well, I didn't increase my own raises. He gave away the store, but not himself. Okay, that's good, but he should give himself a raise, by the way. That job deserves it, but continue.
Some other notable raises. County Clerk Tim Idoni will go from $153,000 to $195,000 next year.
Now that job, does he deserve more? Go ahead, continue. I'll give you my opinion on these.
Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins will go from $157,000 to $197,000.
That's an appointed position. I'm running. Go ahead.
Commissioner of Public Safety Martin McGinn, $155,000 to $225,000.
I'll buy that. That's the top cop. Continue.
Commissioner of Health, Shalita
Amler,
from $172,000
to $230,000. Smackaroos. Oh, go ahead, continue.
Deputy Medical Examiner Alexander.
Whatever.
It's an acting role. $156,000 to $230,000.
Go ahead.
Another medical examiner, which is vacant right now, will go from $172,000 when
I could be a medical examiner. I've been studying bodies all my life.
When that slot is filled to $240,000.
Don't you think, Chris? Couldn't I be a medical examiner now? You should see me during the Victoria's Secret fashion show. I could examine.
Put that in the resume.
Okay, go ahead. Continue.
And finally, Chief Information Officer Margawin Burney goes from $171,000 to $195,000.
Okay. Go into the next story before I shoot myself. 621.
A federal judge yesterday denied the East Ramapo Center School
Can
District.
you twist the mic just a little bit? I want that resonating voice of yours.
A federal judge today denied the East Ramapo Central School District's attempt to dismiss a lawsuit challenging how the district elects its school board members. The ruling by U.S. District Court Judge Kathy Siebel set up a 2-week trial in February that could alter how votes in May's school board elections are tallied. The lawsuit, filed in 2017 by the Spring Valley chapter of the NAACP, and several Black and Latino voters, brought a dramatic change in the district's election process. Under the current at-large setup, every registered voter in the district can vote for all open seats.
So is it going to happen?
Board.
I'm missing. Are they going to do the change or no?
It does not. No, it does not look like it.
They're not certain.
It was shot down.
No, they need to do the change. They can't keep going at large in that place. What else you got? More news. More news.
Carmel Town Board member Mike. Well,
you're struggling with names today. He's shaking off the rust, folks. Go ahead. What is his name?
Mike Barrow, who claims that Carmel lacks the authority to issue a violation for his unauthorized connection to the town sewer main, continues to face legal challenges surrounding the sewer connection at Blue at the Lake House, his restaurant on Lake Mayapack. Barley faces violations from the town he serves and the Putnam County Health Department, the New York State Department of Transportation, and the New York City Department of Environmental Protection.
Wait a minute. Don't you know it's my job to mumble this stuff? We can create our own language.
Must also decide whether to grant permits for the sewer line. Barrow and his partner, Tommy Bonello, installed it in 1993, but were not allowed to connect it to the town sewer main until they won approval from the DEP, which runs the Mayapack sewage plant, though such approval has yet to be granted. Barney's engineer, John Carroll, has said the connection was made on September 3rd. And finally, police offer tips to make sure your packages are
we
safe.
need to discuss this. All right, I get packages on the porch. How do I know they're safe?
You can do what I do and just not buy any gifts for anyone.
That's a great idea. Go ahead.
Authorities are issuing some tips on how to prevent packages from being stolen this holiday season. Yonkers police are encouraging deliveries to be sent to your job instead of your home to discourage porch pirates. They also recommend using tracking numbers and delivery notifications through text or emails. It's also helpful to ask people you trust to accept packages on your behalf. And finally, they recommend installing a smart security camera.
Oh, for God's sake. You know what it does? Oh, this is the perfect thing. This is if you're neurotic, you don't have a job, you don't have kids, you don't have anything else to do. Take a chance. I want sports scores.
Last night, Boston won easily in New Jersey 5-1, and the Islanders on a Brock Nelson overtime goal defeated Pittsburgh 5-4.
Fort never loses back. May I make a comment about that sports? Because we know we're going to hear from Tom. I sent him that picture, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah, of the burning airplane.
Yes, I'm glad you did that.
They can't lose. I've been screaming and yelling and screaming and yelling. Management, leadership, coaching, a system playing major league hockey and not fire wagon hockey wins the day. They can't lose. 13 in a row.
No, they are.
There's a tie in there.
They have the second best record in hockey. Unfortunately for them, the team with the best record is in their division, the Washington Capitals. Tonight they are actually at Madison Square Garden to take on the Rangers. Both NBA locals are in action tonight. The Knicks are in Philadelphia, and Brooklyn hosts Charlotte.
Brooklyn hosts Charlotte. Those are the games. What about the Devils last night? They got their butt kicked again.
Devils lost 5-1 to Boston.
Butt kicking. All righty. We got a couple of other sport items we'll mention. Chris, sign off. Well, not sign off. Throw it.
And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
He says he's Chris Conway. We're not so sure. All right. Some other stories in sports, Kristen, I wanted to discuss with you. I saw this in the paper, and I felt like I was watching one of those Halloween movies where Jason comes back out of the river.
Yeah.
Okay, or is it a lake? He's back. Cespedes is taking batting practice. God knows where. Please trade him. Ship him out of town. He doesn't hustle. He malingers. He's got real injuries now. Please go away. A Bigfoot signing is what they said. Go away. Trade him. Some guy was on Sports Talk early this morning. He'll get 400 at bats. He'll hit home runs. I can't. Baseball just keeps signing. Everybody can hit. You can hit, Chris. I can hit 12 home runs.
Met fans love that guy, though. I mean, he's the reason when they got him a couple years ago in the middle of the season that they made the World Series.
See that story? That's what I think is Cespedes. All right, the Isles remain on point. It's just an amazing thing. Isn't it a shame that they play... They play buildings in that godforsaken Barclays Center. Worst place to watch a hockey game in the history of my life. I've been to blown out rinks. I've been to outdoor rinks, and more fun to watch hockey than Barclays. And they stuck the poor Islanders there because, well, frankly, though, that's because, forgive me, Long Island, you're a Bush League.
I think it actually saved the franchise.
No,
they could be in Quebec City right now.
No, but Bush League for not. Have you been? I'm going to get myself upset.
No, I have not
if
been
you went to Nassau Coliseum right now, you would not see or feel any different. And they put like $120 million into it. Long Island has a lot to answer for. But see, sports writers, they like to talk about the players and all that, but they really don't do any hard reporting. Someone's got to look at how that money got spent. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars and it didn't make a difference, and the municipality out there didn't want to spring for a new rink. So they deserve a minor league hockey team, but God, they got one of the best in hockey, the best manager in hockey, the best coach in hockey. It's all there. I got it out of my system. All right, we have another story to talk about, but we want to take a quick break and give another weather review to you, and Chris will do that. It is 6:28. You're listening to Radio Westchester, Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. Chris, what's the story with the weather? Tell them what it is.
The weather is 38 degrees along the Sound Shore. Today it'll be possible sprinkles, maybe even some flurries. The temperatures will hit the mid-40s, so if there are any snowflakes that hit the ground, they will not stick. Tonight, clear mid-30s. Tomorrow, best day of the week, sunny and around 50. Friday will be warmer than that, but it will be cloudy with some showers in the mid-50s. Weather brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. And the programs today, and all the programs, I got to make a second storyboard here. All the programs are supported by the following: Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena and Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And of course, our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Now, a couple of stories I want to share with you, but also I want to shout out, believe it or not, to the Netherlands, where we'll be talking soon. Marrone, and we'll tell you more about him. My buddy Marrone out there, he's going to be doing some European reports once a week, getting the take on what's going on with our impeachment hearings, how America's viewed overseas, some of the things that are going on in Europe, without the filter of our political class straining that information.
I did not know there was an opening for European correspondent. I would have applied for that instead of sitting next to you.
Oh, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Very, very nice. You know what I like about this, folks? I'm the boss. I can make you cluck like a chicken. Do you realize that? All right, I got a couple of scores. Listen to this, Chris. And Marrone, thank you so much for you're eating lunch in the great. What do you eat? I wonder what you're eating. You say, by the way, if you want to call Marrone, feel free. We would say hello to you. What's the number, Bob? Whatever the country code is, 914-222-3141. If you call in, we'll take your call because we'd love to say hi before we set up our formal connection. Marrone Vandermeer. Anyway, this is one of the things I've been yapping about for years. And it has to do with, and please, it's not so bad up here in Westchester. I know that. But the federal government, it depends on the agency. But New York City municipalities, if you're going to hire someone and you're going to hire managers, just make sure they can do their job. Epstein is dead and will not be drawn. Now get this, will not be. It's an allegation. He will not get a chance to face his accusers and all the women he's alleged to have injured and hurt and humiliated by his behavior, because the guards simply didn't do their job. They were supposed to check on him every 30 minutes. They were sleeping and playing on their phones because people don't care, because managers don't care, and because to get fired in a municipal job, you need a papal decree. Do you understand me?
Yes, I do.
So the guy's dead. And imagine if we ever find out that he's innocent. He's dead, and
yeah.
So they did charge them. They're out on $100,000 bail. Oh, I know who this is. Da 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 da. Oh, good. We're getting call. I didn't even open it up for this yet, but I'm going to take this call. Where am I? Da da da. Caller will be right with you. You stay right there.
Okay.
So that is sticking in my craw, and I needed to get that off my chest. Now, we have a lot of stuff to talk about internationally, what's going to go on today, but I do have one last piece of my monologue before I open up the phones. And if it sticks in your craw, folks, I apologize, but I've got to say this. I never thought in my lifetime, and I've lived a lot. I've lived through the assassination of President Kennedy. I've lived through two other near impeachment trials. Nixon's never happened. Clinton was acquitted, although certainly he did what he was accused of having done. Wars, even one war now that turned out to be done under either mistaken or false pretenses. The bombing of the World Trade Center, Vietnam, the Gulf Wars, you name it, mass shootings. But I never thought in my lifetime that a veteran, a decorated veteran, would have to appeal to the United States Army for protection because of the behavior of a president. I never thought I would live through this. And it is a disgrace. And eventually it'll be looked back on as a black mark on our democracy. And that's all I want to say about that. It's inarguable. Don't even call me and try and defend it. Don't waste your time. I won't back off on this. It's just a disgrace. And you know, the president's either ignorant or he's clever, saying, boy, we outed him. I painted this guy with a brush. Why can't people be magnanimous and say, I don't agree with the guy, but he supported our country. God bless him. I don't understand it. Anyway, the phones are open, 914-222-3141. My apologies for leaving you on hold. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning, Bob. It's Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine. So what did you think last night? I was just going to churn that, but since you called and I love you.
Thank you. I was there. I sat with PTA Council because we made a short not presentation, but we spoke about the board and the superintendent and the unions all working together. But that's beside the point now, I guess. I'd like to see the people that are so passionate about having the superintendent leave come up with some solutions. That's it. You know, okay, you want her to leave, but then what's the outcome of that? And also, you know, they were pretty disrespectful to the principal of Webster, who was trying to make a presentation about the schools. Well, her school.
Why were they disrespectful? I'm going to ask a tough question, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I've been...
No, that's okay.
Are these people becoming a mob? I mean, they sat there at least.
I don't know, because after the meeting is over, you know, I go and speak to some of those people that I've known for a very long time, and we discuss.
Well, what's their beef?
Pardon me? What's their beef?
Now, I understand the other beef with Fajo's lawsuit. At least I get the basis for that. But
right.
but they don't know what the coach is alleged to have done. Do they care? Or do they want to know? See, that's the point. And
for me, from what I see, I don't think so. Because it's and one young girl got up with her mom and said how wonderful he was to her. She was able to eat in his classroom, her lunch, you know, without being part of, you know, the craziness that goes on at the high school, I guess, at lunchtime.
Sure.
But that reeks of so much. I mean, there are rules that the teachers have to abide by. You're not supposed to have a child in a room with a closed door. You're not supposed to have curtains on a window in your office or whatever. I mean, there's so many rules. Mm-hmm. And, you know, some people take advantage of it or think they're above it. That's my take on it.
You know, you're the first person with enough courage to say what people will tell me off air, but won't tell me on air. Because, and look, I don't want to hurt this coach, because I understand that he really does a lot of wonderful things. But I also hear what you just said about him.
You know, and you don't know. Maybe, I mean, I'm just speculating, but maybe teachers have had it. You know. This gentleman has a lot of power in the school, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure security guards wouldn't stop him from doing a lot. Teachers, maybe they you know, say something to the principal. I don't know. Maybe even the principal's afraid of him.
You know, with the principal maybe, but I can assure you Fajo is not.
Oh, no, I understand that.
I can assure you that she is not.
You know, and I think if you sit back and look at it, this is a lesson to the team and every other student that you can be the best person in the world, but you're going to make a stupid mistake, and you have to abide by the law.
Is it reasonable to say that these folks are making it worse than it is? That he simply made a mistake. And again, that's an assumption. We may find out. You always have to leave. As a doctor who doctor who saved my life once said, "All things are possible." And for all we know, he's for motherhood against sin. The principal has got horns on her head, or rather the superintendent. Amy Mazzelli is evil incarnate, and all they wanted to do was put a finger in the coach's eye. And if we find that out, that's how we'll deliver it. But but I can't help but get the feeling that they just don't want their boy to have a blemish. Too bad.
I know. I mean, we're all susceptible to this. It's not. And it's not the end of the world either. People make mistakes when they're young. People make mistakes when they're old. But you move on, and you take your punishment and you move on. That's it. I mean, but the board is adding to this as well. People can't even finish a sentence. After that 3 minutes, that buzzer comes, I understand people, will go on forever. But at least say to the person, your 3 minutes are up, please complete your thought or please finish your sentence and then please sit down. They're adding to this angst.
Well, I did understand that, and I know I got some news flashes in the middle of the night, talk of the Sound article, and people are really upset with the board. They're not happy with the board.
No, yeah.
But they voted the board. You've got a Republican form of government.
I agree with you totally. And then I'm not going to mention the person's name because I don't want to give him any credit. That creep that used to be in Mount Vernon and then moved to Pelham, who has been writing about our school district, who is not part of the legitimate press, of course, was there filming everything. So,
I gotta find out who this is. Wow.
Yeah, I've asked the board at one point, please have a policy of who's allowed to film these meetings and use it for their own advantage.
Is this someone who is anti-school board or just he's got an axe to grind?
Yes. But he doesn't even, supposedly on the blog it was said that his wife, when they lived in New Rochelle, ran for school board and did not get in. Then they moved to Mount Vernon. They started a charter school. They stole money from Mount Vernon. Maybe your person from Mount Vernon can tell you about him.
Yeah.
And then and they have a charter school, and it's very questionable. And then they moved to Pelham because they couldn't put their children in the Mount Vernon school.
Do I know this person? Probably.
I don't know, Bob.
Well,
I mean, he's just come up from the deeps of the ocean.
From the deeps. By the way, I'm sorry that I didn't tell people who you are. Lorraine Carl is with us. She's a regular caller. Sometimes she even visits, and by the way, as you know, no one can accuse me of anything because our windows are always open here. So when you come into the studio, you're safe. Do you remember? Hey, do you remember Chris, who used to work with me at WVOX about 6-7 years ago? He's here, Say hello to Lorraine.
Hello, Lorraine. Nice to hear your voice again.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great.
Is this the guy that worked at the pizza place?
No.
No. This is no. I know who you're talking about. You're talking. That's the one that was on WFAS Mumbles. No, I'm not sure what he's doing. No, this is Chris. He used to do the weather and traffic and stuff. When I would say from 2009 maybe to 12, Chris, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was he the one that used to go outside the studio and tell us how icy?
Sometimes.
Was?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was doing that because I wanted him to get hit by a car.
No, but I remember something with not having a plow, and his wife had to go to the hospital because she wasn't well.
No woman will marry Chris. Are you kidding?
I have them all mixed up. Well, they're all coming together.
No, even though he's a model. Did you know that Chris was a model?
No, I did not.
Yeah, Halloween decorations.
I was waiting for the
a model for what?
Halloween decorations.
Oh, all right.
To save money, what we're going to do Halloween next year, I'm just going to have him stand in the window.
With cupcakes, right?
I'd sign up for that.
He'll sign up for cupcakes. Are you kidding? Eating he can do. So I want to remind folks, and the phones are open 914-222-3141. I know yesterday we heard sort of a preview from Vince Alfitano I hope to hear more. I've invited Bob Cox, who covered it last night, to give us a buzz at 7:20. I want to know more about, because I really want to be fair. But you know what fairness, you know what I keep thinking about? And if you get a chance, you may want to Google this, Chris, and we'll talk about it later.
Oh.
The Boston Massacre. Everybody remembers the Boston Massacre. But what everybody forgets is that all the men were acquitted, except for one soldier. And John Adams, it's when he made his bones, and he said, you know, hey, you people are all nuts, but these guys didn't do anything wrong. They were defending themselves, and it has that feel to it.
But I also think we should start questioning. I don't know if you heard about it. We had statistics about a 5- and 6-year graduation from high school. So, and how the students are doing, and, you know, if they go to night school and all of that. I mean, I think we should be questioning this.
Of course you should be questioning it.
Why it's taking so long for these children. But I remember at one point Dr. Osborne said that we have children coming into the district who are teenagers and don't speak English and have a very minimal education.
Don't you worry about anything. If they transfer the New York City school system here, they will graduate bricks. You can paint eyeballs on a brick, and they'll put it through school. You don't have to pass a test. These damn racists want you to take a test. They want you to add 2 and 2 is 4. You racists, you white supremacists, you. We're losing our minds. Here I am, an old liberal, saying these kinds of things. Unbelievable.
God's gonna get you.
No, he's gonna get me because I'm in this crazy place in the middle, Lorraine, where common sense prevails, and it's very difficult to employ common sense when they want to shoot the woman's in the job 2 weeks and they want her out. I mean, it's insane.
But it goes so beyond her. She did not create this. You know what I'm saying? This has been going on.
She didn't kill Valerie Schwab. She didn't do all the defalcations that put people in jail. She wasn't the reason they fired the principal, or that they lied and were duplicitous about graduation rates, and lied and were duplicitous about testing, or lied and were duplicitous about whether or not the school was open or closed or stuck in the middle. So what I like, and I'm going to show a little more cards here. My take is, and I may be very wrong, and people will say, and I'll admit it, this is my custom, but whenever you get a person of integrity, it never starts well. Because people are used to go along together. Oh, we usually look the other way at that. Folks, those days are over.
I know.
And that's what I'm hopeful for. And that's the sense I got. We had her in here for an hour, and all my years of doing this, I have never interviewed an educator or administrator who had more credibility. So we shall see.
But people can't have it both ways, Bob.
They want it both ways.
People to look the other way for certain people?
Yes.
Or is everyone going to be held accountable?
No, yes, they want them to look that way. And it has always been thus. I often rant about these silly things, but do you know the most painful thing I learned doing hard news and getting to know famous people and getting to understand the way things work? It really is who you know.
Yes, definitely so.
And, look, this is the coach. He can do anything he wants. No, he can't. Not him, not me, not you. I can. When you're here, I can do whatever I want.
Now, I want to ask you about the trials that are going on. I love the formality of it, how they can give these zingers but still be so formal.
Oh, I love it. I love
wonderful.
It. Have you ever taken a chance to watch how they do it in the United Kingdom, even with the Prime Minister?
Oh, yes.
My learned friend. Thank goodness, and I love it. But you know what I try to imagine, and this is one area where you forget your politics. I always try and imagine our recent presidents trying to deal with that. The only one of the three I think could. Now, to President Trump's credit, he would just call them all stupid and a hoax, and it's all fake news, my learned friend. Whereas Bush would just seem confused. I can't imagine. God bless him. He's a good human being. I can't imagine George Bush doing anything quickly. He would. Well, I'm misundereducated, Ma. I misunderestimated your learned. You a learned what, sir? And Obama would handle it well, but he would be very hesitant. But we couldn't do it.
But George Bush Jr. You have to watch.
Well, that's what I'm
when you
talking
have
about.
time. Google. He makes so much fun of himself. It's wonderful.
He's a
And
wonderful
kept
human
it-
being. He really is. More research I do, and he just wasn't. Let's just say he got good at the job at the end, but he learned on the job.
And also, one other thing, when you said about people being afraid,
Yes.
when he was testifying, I'd like you to remember Marilyn Monroe, okay? And let's see what happened to her. Was she?
That's interesting.
Was she murdered or what?
No,
So-
you know what? You got somebody. People do this with. Yes, she had affairs probably with the Kennedys, half of Wall Street, half of what. I'm of course being a little bit hyperbolic here, but you got a woman that had emotional problems, that had relationship problems, that was doing drugs all her life. Nobody's saying that they killed Prince. The idiots that support Jim Morrison, he died of a heart attack. The guy was a freaking addict, and he was in a tub. He dropped dead from drugs. He didn't have a heart attack. Marilyn Monroe, she may have been involved with all these people. Marilyn Monroe died because she was self-destructive. That's my take.
Well, I think differently. So.
Oh, no, that's okay. Who said I'm smart? I'm not smart. I'm giving you my opinion.
But, it's going to be something. I just hope Rochelle, I don't even say move on from this, but come to some kind of consensus and come together and try to, if we can, put out some solutions.
Well, yes, but you know what I think? It's like any other new sheriff. I don't think people are going to have to, in this instance, they don't have to, they don't have to go move on. They need to get over it and accept authority. But, and now let me give them two things I want to just clarify here. Number one, regarding the school situation, if it turns out that there were nefarious reasons for the superintendent to do what she did, or the school board, I'll be the first to say, run her out of town. So we need to allow for that. But otherwise, what they'll just have to do is get over it. No more sacred cows, not in this town.
But the thing is also we have to question the law firm that they hired. I sincerely believe this was not done alone. I'm sure the school board contacted the lawyers and they told them what to do.
Well, yes. But that's part of being an executive. See, the part of being an executive that's tough is someone has to break the ties and make decisions. That's why when you see birds fly, there's always an odd number. You never see the two wings to the same side. Somebody's got to lead, even in the bird world. Somebody's got to make a decision.
So,
Top beak.
We'll see.
Also, just going back to one other thing, when I was talking about being afraid, something that I wanted, if this is for perspective, because if people think I'm only upset that a soldier is afraid and has to ask the Army for help, our friends on the far left have made people who are conservatives afraid to speak out on college campuses every day. And they are equally reprehensible. So,
it's really not good. So,
Lorraine, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are you working today, by
Bye-bye.
the way? Bye.
Keep those windows clear, okay?
Okay, you want to look in at me, don't you? Okay, I understand.
Goodbye.
Go easy on yourself. Bye. It's 6:51. There's something wrong with me, Chris.
That I can confirm.
It is 6:51. 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. It was good to hear from Lorraine. If you were at the event last night, we have plenty of time to open up the telephones. 914-222-3141. 914-222-3141. We're going to go back here and get a little reset going and clear up the weather. We're not going to clear it up. We're going to tell you about it. We're going to tell you who's sponsoring us, and we're going to go over the lineup. It is 6:51. Chris, weather.
The weather is 39 degrees currently along the Sound Shore. It is cloudy. There will be some possible sprinkles, maybe even a snow flurry or two, but nothing to worry about. Temperatures will be in the mid-40s. Tonight, clear, mid-30s. Tomorrow, sunny and 50 degrees. As fall comes to a conclusion in a couple of weeks. That'll be one of the nicer days we have until spring.
Good God.
Friday, it will be warmer, mid-50s, but it will be overcast with some showers. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com.
Thank you very much, Chris. It is 6:52. Coming up on 7 o'clock, the phones are open, 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. I know you keep seeing me change my head. That's adjusting the sound. And now I have to read something, The bottom of the hour has been supported by the following. Plug-in virtual reality, Dominic Cigars, Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Artira Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic Cigars, and the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, aforementioned as they are, top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. The phones are open, 222-3141. Let's take a look at the lineup today. Again, we'd like to talk a little bit more about the school board. Now, one of the things that talk radio is all about is conversation. And every once in a while, I may come out of the box with an opinion that appears strong, but never should it be so strong that you don't feel comfortable to retort or to give the other side of the story. We take position sometimes as a juxtaposition point so that you can join the conversation. Your take is more important than our take. My take, Chris's take, the take of my coffee. Coming up at 7:20. And, oh, my goodness, I have the wrong sheet. Don't laugh. All right. I got the other wrong sheet. What the hell?
Now I'm laughing.
No. Okay. I know I had it right. Well, no, I know. I put my sheet under. There it is. Da-da-da-da-da-da. All righty, coming up, Jeannie Zaino joins us at 7:35. We haven't talked with her in a couple of weeks. She's been busy with our friends over at Fox News. Jeannie Zaino joins us. She is a political science professor. She also is a presidential historian. Al Tarantino joins us at 8:20. He's a city councilman here in New Rochelle. Sean Patterson Howard, the new mayor-elect of Mount Vernon, joins us at an important time. A new budget in her town. B, she said on these very airwaves she wants a chief of staff. She wants to set up a more traditional executive structure there. That is a very wise move. Also, we've covered this story for a couple of weeks now. It's becoming very apparent that New York City has been taking some of its homeless, its indigent, its mentally ill, and sending them to different places, most notably Mount Vernon, Yonkers, etc., which is okay in the first year because they give them rent and they give them food stamps and they give them money, and then after a year they go, see ya. And since when did Mount Vernon become a dumping ground for other cities' problems? They need to cut a better deal. We will help them do that to the extent that we have a bully pulpit, if indeed that is how it works. Sean Patterson Howard will talk about that as well. At 9 o'clock, we're joined today in a long-form interview by Harlan Ullman. He is internationally renowned in terms of security, the military, homeland security, those kinds of things. He's an author, a political wonk. And the cool thing is, he's very close, of course, with the military establishment, not just here in the United States, but many other countries, and the State Departments and foreign ministries of many other countries. And one of his best friends is Mr. Volker, the man who testified yesterday. Wow. They're very close. So we hope to get some insight into Volker's testimony. Was nothing if not honest and nothing if not diplomatic. If you watched any of it yesterday, he gave each side what they wanted. He gave the Republicans answers that they wanted to hear and Democrats answers that they wanted to hear, and he did it without lying. Because he refined his end. Now, that is a diplomat. But nonetheless, what's evolving there are some people, and Mr. Volker, I think, helped the president yesterday, as did Mr. Morrison, because they were in a position to say at various meetings and things that they overheard that they were unaware of any quid pro quo and did not feel there was any. But at other times they said, yes, they were either shocked or surprised because they thought that they were. But on balance, I thought that their testimony yesterday favored the position of the Republicans more or less. But again, the way Mr. Vindman was treated again by their attack dog, Mr. Jordan. Just unfortunate. We can't treat our heroes like this, but politics has become a blood sport now. Maybe it always has been a blood sport. I don't know. But let's tell you what's coming up today. 5 witnesses are scheduled to testify. There are Gordon Sondland, European Union ambassador and a close Trump ally, who other witnesses has described as playing a large role in the conversations with Ukraine. Laura Cooper, a Defense Department official who testified that it became clear aid was being withheld as it relates to the president's concerns about corruption. David Hale, State Department official who testified behind closed doors about the ouster of U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yanovich. She's also the guy that said that he was present, Chris, at when Mr. Sondland held the phone out with the president on it, and they could hear him conversing with the president. Fiona Hill, former White House aide who testified on National Security Advisor John Bolton's concerns about Trump's Ukraine policy. And David Holmes, he's the individual that overheard the call. State Department official who overheard Trump ask Sondland about investigations on a call. So all that will continue. And for those of you for whom it's your first impeachment, learn a little bit about it. It really is interesting stuff, and there is a history to impeachment. Now, impeachment's not clear, and what we did is we took the liberty of doing a little research about how it works. And I have that story right here. And this came out of a number of different sources, but most notably, I will give you the author. Robert Mintz, a former federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of New Jersey, and is currently a managing partner of the Newark office of McCarter and English LLP. With public hearings finally underway before the Intelligence Committee in the House of Representatives, expect the ongoing battle between the two parties over the process to ratchet up. These processes and protections matter, and notions of due process and the right to question witnesses are important, but when it comes to impeachment, it misses the point. When you closely examine the impeachment through the lens of criminal justice, it is clear how different it really is. While the Constitution calls for the House of Representatives to vote articles of impeachment, which is akin to an indictment, to be followed by a Senate trial, which is presided over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and during which witnesses are called, in truth, the impeachment process bears only a passing resemblance to an actual trial, says this law scholar. Unlike in the criminal justice system, there is no code of impeachment. Most people don't know that. There's no code. There's no detailed rules of procedure and no carefully drafted statutes or case law to guide Congress through the process. And we've said that. Come time for the actual vote of guilt or innocence, this sacred precedent-setting responsibility is going to fall on these senators, and we should have great empathy for them, regardless of their party or persuasions. There are no carefully statutes here. Indeed, despite hours of cable news legal punditry, says this scholar, opining on the topic, it is not even clear, and this we've been saying for a month, it's not clear what even constitutes an impeachable offense. And let's see, we're going to patch this call in. Where am I? Let's see who's there. We will get to that call in a moment, in a momento. The Constitution states that the president may be impeached and removed over charges described only, quote, as treason, bribery, which is why the Democrats keep using that word, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, unquote. While treason and bribery are defined in criminal statutes, the Constitution does not define, quote, high crimes and misdemeanors. When General Ford was a member of the House, he famously observed that an impeachable offense, and this is really key, and we'll end it here at this point, whatever a majority of the House of Representatives considers it to be at a given moment in history, and extending that, what senators believe. Now, that's what they believe may be impeachable. So it's really that wide open. It's a synapse. It is totally uncharted territory. That's why it's considered, if you will, folks, it's considered a political event. In other words, in all fairness now to the president and to the Republicans protecting him, if they are not persuaded, even though they may be filibustering, if they are not persuaded when the rubber meets the road, guess what? Then it's not an impeachable offense. Let's see who's on the telephone. Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester.
Hey, Bob. It's Bob Cox.
Hey, Robert. Thanks for calling in. It is 7:02, and we told you we'd hope to hear from him today. His story, very revealing. You'll want to go check it out. Go to Talk of the Sound. Consider the source since 2008. Bob, your take, please, on what happened last night.
Well, I think it's a fair statement to say that the sort of the dynamic shifted last night, and whereas people in the community have been very much opposed to Feijo, Dr. Laura Feijo, the new superintendent, what happened last night is that the crowd really turned on the board itself, and with a lot of people in the crowd shouting and yelling for the resignation of the board president, Amy Moselli in particular, and a few for Paul Warhead, but very, very angry and vocal crowd last night.
Bob, is there, and when I read your story with great interest very early today, you obviously were up very late, thank you for that. This refocusing, I think, folks, is very important not that they're writing letters of love to the superintendent, but the focus very much now is on the board. Are there provisions for any kind of recall? Is there anything they can do other than be the group bully pulpit?
Well, there's not really. There's obviously an election every year, and one or two board seats go up for election. The board itself can vote to remove a president or vice president by a majority vote if they want to do that. The state ed commissioner can be asked to remove board members if he or she sees fit.
Who can do that again, Bob? Could you back up on that one again? I'm sorry.
The New York State Education Commissioner can intervene. But that's done in typical cases of gross malfeasance.
Yeah, they don't even do it then. They're cowards. What they let happen in East Ramapo was stuck in my craw for years.
Yeah. So the answer is that unless a board member chooses to resign, which happened in 2018 when the vice president of the board resigned, Madeline Atala. But no, people were angry, and then immediately afterwards. Amy Moselli came off of the stage and was surrounded by an angry group of community members, parents, and was told and shouted at to resign. And she was standing right next to me when she said, "I'm not going to resign." So I don't see that happening, but that was sort of the dynamic that occurred last night. The most dramatic moment was immediately as the meeting was ending. The newest board member, Valerie Williams, who was elected back in May and sworn in July, was trying to get the floor to make a motion to go into executive session, and the meeting was gavelled to a close. And she then jumped up and went over and confronted the board president, and a very animated, conversation occurred. Which was a little bit difficult to make out, but it was basically to the effect that she wanted to go into executive session so that the board could discuss what they had just heard from the community in the meeting. The board president was having none of it, and she became, as she herself said, very angry and felt that they were making a big mistake to not sit down and discuss what exactly they had heard last night from those in the audience. I think what's bringing matters to the state, is the fact that this is now week 2 of this Coach DiRienzo saga, and still no explanation as to how the process is working or when there's going to be a resolution. And of course, they have yet another game on Saturday. There's potentially 2 games left, the semifinals and then the finals the week after that. And so at this point, there's real fear among the family of the players and the players themselves and others that they're going to be denied their coach again preparing for this game. And while they sort of squeaked through last time, it gets more and more difficult to do that as the level of competition increases.
Bob, if I may, a number of questions, pardon me, arise, but I want to remind people that voice you hear is that of Bob Cox. He's the managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, where you can get this story in total. But and I can say this, it comes from my own opinion, if there are awards for local journalism and the work that he's done with the school system that he's covered extensively, he would get it. So he has that kind of in-depth knowledge of what goes on, and obviously spent a lot of time there last night. So thank you for this. But here's my question. Did either Fejo or Ms. Moselli give any indication as to when they'd give an answer? Because there is, I guess Tiki Barber said it, there's a question of reason here. Even if, and we'll go on the assumption, just for discussion's sake, that the coach did something that required this review. Common sense just seems to say that if he did something, it may not be that terribly egregious. And so the longer we go, the unintended consequence of making this punishment more severe than it ought to be, it comes into play. Have they given any reason for this added time?
No, and in fact, that really set the crowd off right from the beginning, because the board had been in executive session, and the reason that was given to go in executive session sounded a lot like they were going to be discussing the coach's case. And I think people reasonably expected that there might even be a decision coming out of that meeting. And when the superintendent came out and tried to read a statement, and I say tried, about, basically the fact that they had no new information to report, the crowd became very, very loud. And we're talking an auditorium that was probably filled with a couple hundred people, all of them very, very much opposed to the superintendent. And, she didn't even get through her remarks. The crowd interrupted her, became very loud for about 5 minutes. This is right off the bat.
Well, at that point, they become a mob then almost, And I hate to use that word, but let her talk.
Well, board president, sort of gavelled the meeting and said if it continued, she was going to cut the meeting short. And so, that wasn't really a great start.
No, no, it doesn't sound like it, Bob. Go ahead.
But the crowd then settled in, and they went through the normal board agenda, but then things heated up again when it got into the public comment period.
Well, that's now. Were you able to glean, in as much as they stopped her, what her statement was?
Well, it was just to the effect that they had nothing new to report, and they were continuing to move through the investigation process as quickly as they could, and the crowd was having none of that.
No. Well, so where do we go from here? It almost sounds like there is a stalemate as you and I talk.
Well, I mean, the supporters of Coach DiRienzo cannot really do anything except, bring pressure on the board to press for some sort of resolution. I will say.
Well, that's fair.
Well, I don't know if fair has anything to do with it, because nothing other than the restoration of Coach D to his position will satisfy the people that were in that room last night. But probably or besides the situation with Valerie Williams, I mean, she was really, I would say, distraught at what was happening. But then after the meeting actually was over, the board president came off of the stage. This was at the Webster Elementary School auditorium, and was then surrounded by people, including a phalanx of security guards, and people began, standing there engaging her. Some of them, quite aggressively, and others, more like parents, sort of passionately. And Amy Moselli actually stood there for about half an hour and went back and forth, with the crowd, which I, quite frankly, found a little bit strange. My advice would have been, get the hell out of there.
Yeah, get out of there, yeah.
But she stood there and basically mostly listened to what people had to say, but had nothing more to add. So it felt a little bit like impotent rage, right? The people are very upset, but there's nothing they could do as long as the board and superintendent sort of stick together on this. And, but they don't seem to be reacting to any clock, any concerns of the community, any playoff schedule.
Yeah.
And the frustrating thing, I think, for a lot of people is they're not saying what it is exactly they're doing that's taking so long.
712, we're talking with Bob Cox, managing editor, publisher of Talk of the Sound, considered the source since 2008. You want to go and read that story and also the photos, videos, etc. It almost is moot to ask you, where do we go from here? It seems that the net of that meeting is we don't know where we go from here because there was no one's even given any kind of a timeline or anything.
Yeah, no, and I think, another dynamic that was at play was that the players themselves yesterday recorded a video of a prepared statement that they then read to the camera, and a version of that was read by a woman last night who could barely get through it. She was choking down tears as she read it. There's a sort of an X factor here that's not getting really any attention as we go through the process, right? Which is that there are, young student athletes who have spent a long time preparing. Many of them were in their final year to be at this point in their football career, and they feel very much cheated by what's going on because they don't have their coach. And as one mother of a star player said, "My son's a senior. He's going through the process of being recruited to play in college, and these being denied the opportunity to have access to her coach, his coach, as he goes through this process dealing with colleges, is jeopardizing his opportunity, perhaps, to go to these colleges and get a scholarship." And for the one mom was saying, for my kid, this is sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity, and to be in limbo is particularly distressing for the families of these student athletes, because for them there is a lot more riding on it than just maybe one particular playoff game.
Two things jump to mind. Number one, does the coach have a camp or a spokesman? Has anyone spoken to him or his lawyers or anything like that?
Well, you had a guest on Monday, Mark McLean, who's in regular contact. Bishop Leak is regularly in contact. I think members of the Parent Football Association are. So, and of course, his own family is making remarks.
Well, they're making remarks, but do we know what the coach's position on it is? That's a triangulation. I think that he is in contact with people like Mark and like Bishop Leak and others who are, and his own sons who are coaches at Rutgers, who are articulating his point of view to a large degree. Perhaps the most surprising moment of last night was in the middle of the public comments. A nun got up to speak, Sister Joan Great
Rienzo, from St. Bernadette's Academy in Brooklyn, and she got up to the microphone and introduced herself as Coach DiRienzo's sister.
Wow!
And my thought was, well, when you've got the nuns out, you've got a problem.
I was just going to say, good grief.
She wasn't one of these sort of Sister Patril flying nun type nuns.
No, I understand. Robert,
Marine Sergeant type nun.
I get it.
He was taking no prisoners.
Hey, Bob, but here's a question I have. I know it's got to be in the back of your mind too, and why we should all take pause, at least in my view. The superintendent, the board president, the school board, they were obviously at that meeting. I'm stating the obvious. It would be in their best interest long term to expedite this thing, because the longer it goes, I'm postulating this, Yuria, the longer it goes, if we find out that this is a tiny misdemeanor, this ain't going to ever go away, if indeed it does. It's in their best interest to resolve this quickly if it's something minor. And the longer it goes, they're going to pay a price, no?
Well, I think they are already paying a price. They've permanently alienated the large section of the community and the constituency that the board and Dr. Fahey has. I mean, you've got the union 2 weeks into her 4-year contract calling for a resignation. I don't think any of the people who are involved in supporting the football team, I don't think the black community is going to be forgetting any of this ever. I think this is a permanent issue. And so you're right in the sense of, I would just sort of call it inexplicable that this would take now going into week 2. Nobody seems to really be able to understand that. And when she was on the floor talking to the parents, and there is video, I videotaped the entire
that's why I told people to go to your website. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, on the floor. But you'll hear Amy Mozelle saying that the board actually has nothing to do with the investigation. And then, of course, people saying, well, who does the investigation? Yeah. And she even said the superintendent is not involved in the investigation, that this is something that's being handled by like building administrators and central office administrators. That just is not cutting it for most people, because at the end of the day, those people work for the superintendent, and the superintendent works for the board.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that's being presented to these parents, as it was last night, you can watch the video yourself, is that somehow the board and the superintendent are powerless to intervene to expedite this investigation. It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
We on your own air Monday, the Fuse Union President Martin Daly said he believes that this is being deliberately slow walked so that Coach DiRienzo doesn't coach another game this year.
That would be so wrong, and I don't have a problem saying that, and I would be quite disappointed with the superintendent having said that. It's just something doesn't add up. It's in their best interests to move this quickly, Robert.
Well, and you mentioned Tiki Barber. Okay, so all of a sudden you have people who are media personalities and pro football players, retired, now weighing in. Obviously, Ray Rice is. I mean, this is starting to snowball, and I can tell you one of the names I heard bandied about was they're trying to reach out to Stephen A. Smith of ESPN. Well, this becomes. No, really. I mean, this becomes sort of a cause celeb.
You know what, though, Bob? But shouldn't we all be careful? We're all, I don't mean we, you and I, but in general, the zeitgeist is arguing over what's behind curtain number 1. We don't even know what's behind curtain number 1. And what surprises me here is from a PR point of view, I have to believe, and when I say I have to believe, I don't mean this in my soul, but one would think that for them to take so long to do this, the coach broke a rule that we don't understand. I
would say this. I think when the announcement was made of this decision to re-sign the coach Wednesday evening, I would think it's safe to say that not a single person, probably including the board, thought we'd be having this discussion that they're still investigating now going into week 2. So I think whatever frustration existed right out of the gate, it is now starting to get cubed and cubed again and becoming sort of exponentially larger because things aren't getting resolved.
And if I may, a take that I had from our conversation, and you were here, we shared the hosting of the Union Head and Reverend McLean. I found the union fellow, to be very reasonable. And sometimes, you're going to have a union guy on. Oh, boy, is he just going to paint one side of this picture? I thought he was very fair-minded in the way he presented himself. And it seems to me he'd be willing to sit down and have a sensible conversation about this thing. That's what I inferred. Did I infer incorrectly?
Well, I think you did. I will tell you that yet another thing that came out after the meeting was that Amy was asked about that, and she said that, in fact, they were trying to set up a meeting between the superintendent and the president of the union, Martin Daly, but that it hadn't happened yet. But, again, why does that take more than a week? So I gather they're going to try to do that, and they do want to sit down and talk. But I just, it lends credence to the idea that there is an idea here of just dragging this out for some other reason.
But that's
I
going to
would
be so
remiss if,
transparent at the end of the day.
well, it depends on what comes back.
I'll
But
give you an
remember,
analogy. I've been supportive of the superintendent in the sense that if the guy broke a rule, I don't care what a sacred cow he is. On the other hand, and I'm going to make a ridiculous analogy, but it'll make my point. If someone got in trouble for stealing a pack of cigarettes, and you let it drag off, and let it drag on this wrong, your whole construct and authority is going to just be destroyed. He better have robbed a bank. And that's the point I'm making. If it goes on much longer,
I'll give you another analogy, which is that although Dr. Fahey may have many talents and many skills, being in the situation she's currently in isn't one of them, because you could work for an airline, okay?
Yeah.
But your job might be making sure that there's enough packs of peanuts on every flight back at the main office, and that's a lot different than being the pilot of the plane.
Yes, sir.
And when you're in the bureaucracy in the New York City education system, you're doing a lot of things that aren't necessarily what you do as a superintendent of a school district like New Rochelle. She's now dealing directly with the school board every day. She's dealing directly with the union every day, and dealing with the media and the public at these meetings in a way that she never has done before. And, you'd have to look at the result and say, is she in over her head in doing these things? She may have many technical skills, but
do you think
the way she behaves is really setting people off?
Bob Cox, do you think that she didn't have, and I don't know, do you think she didn't have this on the way up? I mean, clearly she must have run a school or run a district herself before she had all those districts reporting to her. I should think this isn't her first rodeo, but then I'd have to look into that.
Well, I mean, it is on her resume, but also it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
She's mostly been very, very high. I'd say you could say she's in the top 10, was in the top 10 people in the city. So she was dealing with the bureaucracy. She wasn't running a school. She wasn't running a particular local district. So she's in sort of a different area. I don't know that she's in over her head, but it's starting to look that way, at least in regard to this piece of what the job is. I want to add, because people might be wondering who went to the meeting or heard the meeting last night, I myself spoke at the meeting. In fact, I was the first speaker at the meeting, and the issue I brought up is one I'll have a story on probably today or tomorrow, which is the idea that's out there is that the coach did not get a medical attention or call 911 for a student that was in medical distress. And this is the policy violation, and this is the concern. And that what's animating all of this is a dispute of personalities between the medical director and the athletic department.
This is your opinion.
Well, I'm telling you what's out there.
Oh, got it. Yes. Okay.
Got it.
That
it is about a dispute over an athletic trainer, which has been a dispute over the past year. My concern is that if it's true that the medical director is sort of orchestrating this and is the one who brought the complaints that her staff wasn't properly consulted and 911 wasn't called, the paramedics didn't come. If that's true, my concern is, and I reported this last May of 2018, there was never an investigation by the school district into what happened back in January 2018 with the stabbings and the violence. And in particular, I mentioned the case of the student who was stabbed in the high school.
Yeah, in the high school.
But I did an investigation, and I interviewed 20 people, including got all the records from the police department and interviewed the deputy police commissioner and over a dozen people that were in and around the room when this incident occurred with the stabbing at the school. And what I know for sure is no one from the school called 911 that day. And the reason they didn't call 911 is because the medical director, Dr. Brooke Balchan, ordered her staff not to call 911 that day. And so, that I know. If it's true that she's behind this, it's pretty rich coming from her to go after the Coach D for not calling 911 when she herself did the same thing, except in a case where a student was bleeding to death before her.
Well, that may well be true, and it becomes rich, and it becomes interesting and informative, and wow, now we have two people that did it, and she should have known better. But what the concern what I've heard, and again, folks heard, there's this other little sliver of nuance here, which is that because the coach knew the family, that the coach in effect wanted to cover up what happened. In effect, that was the intent. As well as it was to take care of the girl, it was to keep it off the radar. And we don't know that that's true, but that's the sensibility. Those are the first reports that we got.
Well, let's just stipulate for a moment that is true.
Mm-hmm.
So what? What is the big cover-up?
Well, I don't.
That the student would do what? Get in trouble for being drunk at school?
No. What it does, it speaks to the sensibility that the coach thinks he's better than the system, or more powerful than the system, and wielding power that doesn't belong to him.
Well,
I'm not saying that that's
again,
so, but that sensibility is out there, and you know that.
Well, okay, but let's stipulate that all of that's true. Okay, what is the crime that warrants any action against the coach?
I'm going to assume it was not calling 911 because again we don't know what's under the cover.
Okay, so suppose we'll stipulate that for the sake of argument. Does that necessitate that he be put through the process he's been put through?
Well, that's a very, very fair question, and I can't answer that. I think that's where I have to punt and say the superintendent and the board needs to answer. As I said, my analogy is someone steals a pack of cigarettes versus robs a bank. It seems to me the punishment may well be becoming way bigger than the alleged crime here. Hey, Bob.
Well, I would tell you that the fact of the matter is, at the high school, despite the fact that it is the board policy, and full disclosure, I was part of the SAFE Community Security Committee that worked on writing that protocol, so I know exactly what all the protocols are. They all start with the same thing, and I'm just going to say that it's based on the New York State Police template, and I can tell you what the template says. The template says, step 1, call 911. That's always been the policy at the high school, and guess what? They've never, ever
Nobody
followed it.
does it. Hey, listen, we've got to move on, but what a great job, Bob. I really appreciate you making the time today. You were up late covering this story. Bob Cox, managing editor and publisher of Talk of the Sound, Consider the Source, since 2008. Considered the Source. Now you know why. Go on Talk of the Sound today. Look at the whole story. Look at the video. Listen to the sound. Bob, terrific job. And if anything breaks on this, you can break into what we're doing anytime.
Okay, Bob, thanks.
Thank you very much. Great job, Bob Cox. And folks, he's been covering Chris. This guy has been covering this school. He's always all over it. And that was good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did it. I'm glad I was here to do it. I'm glad Bob was there to do it. Anyway, as you can see, folks, we're bending every which way we can to try and be fair to all parties here. It's a complicated issue, but the longer it goes on, they better have some good answers, at least for why the process took so long. Do you understand what
Yes, it's amazing to me that hasn't been flushed out yet.
So to speak. All righty, it is 7:30. We've got a few minutes to go before we get to our next guest, Dr. and Professor Jeannie Zaino. Right now, we're going to compel Chris. I know you want to know about the weather. All I know is the temperature. By the way, folks, I think Chris has a seeing problem. And we're going to see if he gets the temperature right. Let me give him a little music. It's time for the weather with Chris Conway. And the man about town has entered the building. He's here. That's right. Get your money ready. He's been cooking up his picks, Jake's picks of the week. They're not coming up until Friday, but we talked about them before. We're also going to talk about Cespedes with him a little later. All righty, Chris, weather.
It is 37 degrees along the Sound Shore.
You were able to actually read it correctly.
It was either 37 or 87, so
Just go ahead.
Since I wore a winter coat here today, I'm assuming it was 37. Today, possible sprinkles, maybe even a flurry or two. Nothing to worry about on that front, though. Mid-40s. Tonight, clear, mid-30s. Tomorrow, best day of the week, sunny, 50 degrees. Friday will be warmer, mid-50s, but there will be showers in the forecast. And this forecast is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. Voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
That was Chris Conway for Radio Westchester. Folks, this bottom of the hour is brought to you by... Just my brain went south because I was reading something else. Don't laugh at me, Chris. Give me my board back. You took it. Perfect timing. The music ended before I did it. All righty. Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio. You really want to start listening to that show when it comes up. The law firm of Pena and Con. Dominic's Cigars. Dominic's Fine Cigars. Licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrones, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road, Larchmont, New York. Open 7 days. You know, every time I do the cigar ad, I think of what Freud once said. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar.
Are we smoking here, by the way?
What?
I might have a big stogie sitting next to you, and
No, I choke. I can't. Well, our man about town, Jake Schaefer, is a cigar man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And plug-in virtual reality. Now, before we talk with Jeannie Zaino, so much to do, so little time. Great job again by Bob Cox, and we've got about 2 or 3 minutes if anyone wants to call and amend or challenge that. Now, Jake. A little bit about Jake. Jake has been doing a lot of what we call production and bit production, and he's been checking up on people that are sending inquiries to me and different things like that beyond what I get as text. And he's going to come on in a little while, and we're going to find out what people are abusing me or not. The best abuse I ever got was when I first started, Jake. And you can grab a mic, Jake. You can, or you're still doing research. The best abuse I ever got was one guy called up. Now, when I first started in radio, you're nervous, so your voice gets higher. He said I was making fun of Rush Limbaugh, who, of course, has a great voice and great presentation skills. And the person, it really cut to the core. He said that I sounded like Alvin the Chipmunk.
Oh.
Yes, Jake.
I've been poring over our listener mail, and it's been mostly positive.
Well, that's good. You know, I got yesterday. We just on one outlet, we had 500 listeners on YouTube, watchers on YouTube yesterday. That was just that. So we do have some time now. I don't know when Professor's going to call. Do you want to abuse me now, or are you still lining this stuff up?
Vibrating cleats and bandages.
Excuse me, vibrating cleats.
How far did the Houston Astros go
Vibrating
to get that competitive edge?
Vibrating cleats. You can't throw me a straight line like that.
I knew you would like that one.
Be putting a vibrating cleat in my pocket.
In important home games, the Astros would have an employee working far from the dugout, not banging on trash cans, working far from the dugout, decipher signs from the same camera.
We forgot to set this up. This is before the abuse that he's going to give me about me. We're talking about some of the sports stories that he digs into. And, of course, we're talking about the scandal or the emerging scandal coming out of Houston. Go ahead.
They would have an employee far from the dugout, decipher signs from the same camera they had set up in the outfield. That person would then relay a signal to a device that the batter was wearing in his cleats that would vibrate in a pattern to what the pitch is. Vibrate once for a fastball, vibrate twice for an off-speed pitch.
Am I going to go to hell for this? But could I put that device in my cup?
I knew you were going to go
there.
No,
I'm just saying.
You have an express ticket already, so don't worry.
No, go ahead.
Don't worry about it.
Over time, they came up with a variety of methods so they would switch it up as to not get cheap.
Yeah.
Such as realistic-looking electric bandages that would buzz into the same pattern as the cleats. So, is this cheating?
I wouldn't get doing that bad.
And how do you punish the Astros? What is a proper punishment?
I saw some of... I saw some of the, let's get to our guest, but we'll be back with you in a little while, Chris, but I'm going to answer your question. Some of the things that have come up are suspending the GM or the owner or taking away draft choices. But what I'm going to be interested in after we take this call is, what do you think? And then we'll find out some of the cards and letters that we're getting. Jake is going to be doing a lot more with us as I get my head straight here. Good morning. You are on the air. This is Radio Westchester.
You're going to need to find some kind of magic tonight to celebrate someone special's birthday.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah, I got a lot of that. How are you, my friend? What's going on? And what do you think of Bob Cox's report? Anthony's on the phone.
Bob has the inside scoop. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. If this indeed comes from basically a pissing match with the athletic director, and they're holding Coach D hostage,
Well, they shouldn't.
Then,
See, that's wrong. I can't even equivocate. That's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. But that may not take away from the fact that protocol was violated.
Yes.
Now, it is rich that she's if in fact she's the source of this complaint, or I don't even know if it's a she, the athletic director, whoever that may be.
I think it's a she, but no, the athletic director. I think he meant the medical director, but
okay,
and
whatever,
yes.
whoever the person that Bob identified.
Yes.
It's rich that they didn't follow the same policy. This is almost like a get even type of situation. And it's very hypocritical. But again, we have to look at what the policy is and whether it was or wasn't followed. Now, again, is that egregious enough to take 2 weeks to investigate and come to some kind of decision? Again, I don't think we know all of the details, and I'm not sticking up for the board or Dr. Fayou.
No, you're just being reasonable, our brains are almost in line, which scares the living daylights out of me. But this is exactly how I feel about it.
Well, that's only because we're within an inch of each other's height.
Yeah. Chris, don't laugh. It's not funny.
Chris, you're not much taller, Chris. Don't go
Thank you. There you go. There. Yeah. By the way, do you know what I do?
There's something to be said for Three Stooges.
Yes.
Come on now.
Can I have a little sidebar here with you and have some fun? You know that Tom from Pelham has been calling to torture us every day. I don't know if you heard any of those calls from Aruba. It's 80 degrees. I'm looking.
Oh, you mean with them ready for the massages?
Yeah, and then he also yesterday, and then 2 days ago he sends me a text. I'm lying on the beach and I'm looking at a swimsuit photo shoot, So last night he made the mistake of telling me that Chris is shaking his head. He was flying back last night. So I sent him a picture of the burning airplane in San Diego on its way down to Grand. Chris, you should
have asked him if he was traveling over the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, I thought of that. But going back to this, you just hinted on it, and earlier today, our dear friend Lorraine Carr had the first one to have the chutzpah to say it. There is an underlying issue nobody's talking about because you'll get yelled at, but we're not afraid to be yelled at here. You yell at me every day. Is that this coach May, as grifted and wonderful as he is, there are people that feel, and they don't want to go on the record about it, that he's such a power in the school system, that he's beyond criticism, and that he can make his own rules. There's that sensibility out there that nobody wants to go on the record about, but they'll tell me off the record.
Well, that's teachers and school staff have made those kind of comments again off the record.
Yeah, but
or in private conversations or even in group conversations. But again, that shouldn't sway whatever happened or didn't happen or was supposed to happen.
What is.
What is.
Mm-hmm.
It's the protocol is the protocol, as Bob said. I believe is based on some kind of police agenda or protocol or whatever.
Safety protocol.
So it's something that's consistent, at least I would think, across New York State, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, at least Westchester County. So that's why protocols exist.
Right, and
people don't realize how lucky that this child and their family is. I mean, if indeed the reports that we hear are true, and they're not, I'm not saying they're confirmed reports. I want to keep that out there, okay? But everybody seems to understand that there was, I think it was a young girl who was intoxicated at school. I've heard reports that she fell down on the floor in the lunchroom. And this is the problem I have with the whole situation not being resolved, regardless of how it is resolved. You're in a lunchroom. There are hundreds of kids every period. There are cameras all over the place. There have to be multiple security guards assigned to the lunchroom.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they can't get to the bottom of this.
Well, and I understand that there's a videotape.
Who do they have to interview? All they have to do is do a Warner Wolf.
Beats me, yeah. Let's go to the videotape is what he's referring to for those of you old enough to remember the great Warner Wolf. Suppose, and this is what people aren't looking at, and this is, again, not to demonize the coach, and also the two things I wanted to ask you about, that and the notion of a new sheriff. One, even if they didn't historically call 911, maybe this principal or this superintendent, I should say, is not going to tolerate that. That's number one.
But we go back to what we said a minute ago. Protocols.
Yes, and that's my point.
Regardless of who's whichever sheriff is in town.
Right now, but they didn't follow it before.
The sheriff can decide whether they want to follow protocol on a district-wide basis or not. Okay, but once the superintendent makes that decision, that's it. So evidently, the superintendent has decided. Listen, there's been too many, and I think this is the sentiment out there for the people that are supporting, if there are very many, new superintendent. There's been a lot of questionable choices made in the Rochelle School District over at least the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years.
10 years, absolutely. Well, I may be her last supporter. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt so far. And but anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so at what point do you start pulling on the choke collar that you've loosened up for 6 notches already? You know what I mean? And I guess you felt the one notch wasn't going to be enough. She had to take the bull by the horns. And quite honestly, you know as well as I do, if the new sheriff in town wants to get the town under control, he goes after the biggest.
It's exactly
he or she goes after the biggest bully.
Well, I got two other things. One, I'll share a story with you. But first, suppose this girl had died in the cab or the car on the way to her parents.
That's where I was going before, Bob. Before I got sidetracked.
Sorry.
If you have a child or a person, let's look at it in general. Someone who's intoxicated to the point where they're falling down, they can't respond. She could have hit her head when she fell, had a concussion. Who knows if there may have been drugs involved? These are things that people took for granted. Now, I don't know the circumstances. I don't know the particulars.
Yeah, and I'm sure the coach
so maybe the child has a history of alcohol abuse, and it was presumed that that's what it was. Maybe her breath smell, whatever it is. But my point is, when a child is in distress in a public building, where a school district is charged with her safety until the end of the day, protocols have to be followed.
Yes, and I'll give you an example of why what people need backing. When I was an executive, I got a very interesting promotion. I had been offline writing speeches and stuff. But, like a guy who's in the back office in the military, I want to go where the action is. What a mistake. So they gave me this position called, I don't know if you're familiar with securities lending, but it was very scandal-filled in the mid-'80s. And I was taking the job of a guy.
Where you belong.
Yeah. Well, I was taking the job of a guy that had gone to jail, and another guy went to jail. And I was tasked with these. We're going to send you to the front lines. You're going to run this business, and you're going to straighten it out. And it was tough. And within 2 days, there was this area of gifted people, terrific, but they hadn't been playing by the rules for years, and it was suspected that their boss was cooking the books. And lo and behold, I found out that he was by my 4th day. So what do you think I did as the new sheriff in town?
It is what it is. You got out him.
I fired him. Well, those people went to management. They went to human resources because he was a beloved figure. Everybody loved the guy. Now, again, the analogy it drops where Coach D is clearly great at what he does, and that's not. But my point is, I'm talking about changing a culture. So what we did was we said, all right, and that's just my nature. You beat me up sometimes on issues, and I take my lumps. That's how I was brought up. And I opened up the office door, and I said, here, let's go in the conference room. And his whole unit, it was this one unit that did things where we marked to the market. And I said, you got 2 hours. Everything you want to tell me, everything you want to say, everything you want to do, have at me. One woman even, she didn't throw it at me. One woman even threw an eraser across the room. We loved him. He was great. You don't know what he did for us. You don't know how he helped me when my kid was sick. And I just kept saying, you have to balance every day. We've never balanced every day. I said, I know, but we're going to start now. Anyway, so you always got to you got to back the new sheriff until the new sheriff has proved that they had other motives, and that's where. See,
but for me, it's not about that. I gave her the benefit of doubt coming in. I still give her the benefit of a doubt, but I don't understand what's taking so long.
Neither do I, and that one turned my head today, and I'm sure if you heard it,
and on the opposite side of the scale, okay, to balance it a little bit.
Yes, sir.
I'm appalled, really, that there are some community leaders that are using this to push other agendas.
Of course. Oh God, yes. I mean, that was obvious.
But it bothers me. It bothers me because her hiring has nothing to do with this situation, and her hiring has nothing to do with her. That's an issue with the school board.
Mm-hmm.
So everything's getting intertwined here, and I think it's intentional. So that they want the broom to sweep clean, both the superintendent, the president of the board, and or all but the newly elected members of the board.
Well, I think something that Bob pointed out, and I saw it in the middle of the night when he sent me the story, is he senses the worm turning a bit more towards the school board than the superintendent at this point in time.
Well, yes, it has to, because the school board has the ultimate authority to overrule.
Yes, they can remove the principal tomorrow. See, Bob has said to me when we discuss it, and I tend to agree with him. I think this board and I think this principal superintendent, please excuse me. I don't think they're going anywhere.
I think that remains to be seen. But like I said, I watched part of the meeting that Bob posted.
Yes.
On his website.
Mm-hmm.
And after the first couple of speakers, I just couldn't watch anymore because it's clear that people weren't dealing with an issue. Okay, there was too much emotion. There were some people, in my opinion, that were trying to incite the people that were there.
Yeah.
Almost in a riot type.
Yeah, it's almost mob.
Situation.
It's almost becoming a mob.
I'm not saying that people acted inappropriately, although I think they were discourteous. Okay, but there's a very fine line there.
Yes, this is true. Anthony, great call. Oh, by the way, Anthony, you're going to want to listen. We're bringing Jake back. By the way, before we bring Jake back, let's get Jake. Get on your mic. We want to get your opinion.
I'm telling you, you need those vibrating something or other tonight.
That's all I'm going to get. Hey, Jake just talked about what do you think is happening in Houston, and what kind of punishment would you mete out? And of course, we're talking about the now emerging cheating scandal, stealing signs, and having some sophisticated technology. What would you do, Anthony, if you heard Jake's opening remarks?
Bob, I'm an old school guy. I don't believe in cheating. That's why I believe anybody who is in the PEDs should have an asterisk put next to their name in the books.
Uh-huh.
So it is what it is. You got to have a level playing field.
Well,
so
yes.
Somebody's got to go. Somebody's got to be suspended. Somebody's got to be fined big time.
Jake?
I think the new Mets manager has been caught in a bold-faced lie.
Yeah, he has been, hasn't he? Yeah, but he's just a puppy.
First of all,
dog.
I don't know why he's even the new Mets manager, but that's a whole nother
You know
issue.
why he's a new Mets manager? Because you get a new guy who's grateful for the job. He's going to be like a puppet. Hi,
Well, I call him a lapdog.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah, I do believe this is cheating, but how do you take away the World Series? Do you take the banner down?
Well,
Do they care?
I mean, you can't go that
do
far.
Do you suspend them for the postseason?
Let's be honest. There are pitchers out there. There are some today. Like Bob Gibson and Mariano. You knew what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't.
You couldn't hit it anyway.
Still couldn't hit it. So, you still have to perform, even if you know it's coming. So, if it's an off-speed pitch, you have to wait a little bit more, but you still got to hit the ball.
No vibrating cleats. We're going to save you from Bob Gibson.
I got to buy new cleats. Oh, by the way, one thing you didn't know with Bob Gibson, if the ball was coming at your head. God,
or if he was nice, it was the middle of your back. If you pissed him off, you better have 3 helmets on.
He threw at a guy in an old timers game once. He said he really did, because I read his book. I think I've told you all ad nauseum. I've read just about every book a pitcher ever wrote. And
you nauseate a lot of people.
But I hate you, Anthony. Thank you very, very much.
You got it.
Yeah, bye. Take care. I know he's right though. All righty, it is 7:51. It's Jake's time now, unless we get more calls, and we'll take more calls. But Jake, what do you think ought to be done
To the Astros?
to the Astros?
I don't know what's the punishment. Do you punish the manager? Do you?
No, I don't think
a month, a year.
Well, you got to find out who's in on it.
Yeah, who is in on it? I think everyone's in on it. I think everyone had to have known of it. There's going to be more whistleblowers, more ex-employees.
I think you have to. I think you got to sit the manager down for some games.
And again, this investigation isn't just the Astros. There's other teams, but I think the Astros were the most blatant and the most creative.
And of course, with the vibrator, Chris, what would you do?
You may have to kick some people out of the sport. Like maybe
You can't kick them totally out of the sport. It's not that egregious, is it?
I think it is. I just saw an article online a little while ago saying this is one of the greatest scandals in baseball history.
No, it's not. They've been stealing signs since I was going to say since I was 5'2", but since I was a baby, and
Yeah, it's cheating. It goes over that level. I think it's, is it worse than steroids? Is it worse than betting on baseball?
No. And look, if because he was the greatest quarterback in the history, everybody knows. Do you realize that if the law had applied to what the Brady did 4 years ago, he would have been to jail for obstruction of justice for destroying his phone. I thought that scandal, not again, sort of like Nixon, the cover up of that scandal was worse than the scandal. He got 4 games.
Well, I think
I didn't think his crime was that big. I think the cover up
what the
was
Patriots
worse.
did to the Rams was even worse. They bugged their Super Bowl practices,
and nobody got thrown out of. No. I hear you. I think that there should be punishment, but I don't. I think banning for life is a little bit.
But what do
extreme.
you? I mean, if you're an Astros fan, do you care? Okay, take the World Series banner down. Do you really care that much?
No, they're not going to take the banner down. They've already said that they won't take the thing away. Do you know the guy? I never thought they should have taken away the who's the great bicyclist.
Lance Armstrong?
Yeah, I don't think they should have taken away his medals or whatever you call them, because that sport is ridiculous. That sport, everybody does. Everybody was doing performance-enhancing drugs. He was just better at it than everybody else, and was a miserable human being. He was a miserable human being. Yeah.
He's a terrible guy.
And that's one of the reasons they went after him. I have a couple of other sports things I want to ask you, Jake, as our expert. And this is bubbling up. And this is a hockey story. The Rangers have a goalie in the minors. Shesterin is his name. Mm-hmm. He last year in the KHL, the second best league in the world, it's Europeans Major League. He had a goals against average of like 1.15, like Bob Gibson type numbers. He's doing it again in the American League. Now here's the question: if you're the GM of the Rangers, you've got an aging icon in the net. You have a really good backup in Georgiev. They can't keep this guy down on the farm much longer. He may be the best goalie in hockey, and he's in the minors.
Well, trade your star and load up on draft picks and rebuild, just like.
Well, yes, but he doesn't want to go, and he has a no-trade clause.
Oh.
Or do you just say to Mr. Georgiev, trade him?
Well, you could probably get the mother load for him, right?
He'd probably get a decent.
You're going to have to do something, because I saw an article yesterday in the Post where Georgiev can only play or be on the roster for a certain more number of days or games, and then he's stuck. They'd have to put on waivers to send him down. Right, so they only have about a week or two to make this decision.
Well, they're going to have to make a decision because you can't keep this guy. See, I loved Mr. Lundqvist, but I think like every other great veteran that they had, I think they call him in and they say, look, we won't send you to the minors because you're a great guy, and you can't have 3 goalies. You're not going to dress or something like that.
I don't know. That would be.
But you can't. But you
He's
can't.
the face of the franchise.
You can't improve. Well then Georgiev's got to go, and he becomes a backup.
I think that's what will happen. I think they'll trade Georgiev.
Well, they get something good for him. Some teams really need goaltending, and they're really being hurt. Martin Jones is playing under what he usually does. A couple of other guys. But that's a hockey story. Third hockey story, Jake. They can't lose out on the island. 13, 14 games in a row without one tie and all the rest are wins. Tom from Pelham is probably drunk, euphoric today.
They were actually down 2 goals with 4 minutes to go last night.
Yeah. Where did they play today?
They were in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah, they were on the road. They weren't playing in that godforsaken. I went to 2 games at the Barclays Center. Horrible rink, horrible building. Jake, your opinion?
Well, they're 15 and 13, right in the mix.
No, you mean 15-3.
Or 15-3,
I'm sorry. 15-3. Yeah, only Washington's better. All right, moving on to your specialty, sir. Are you cooking up anything for tomorrow night's Thursday night game?
Yes, it's a very good game. The Texans are at home against the Colts. Texans giving 4, so think about that. Definitely have an inkling in that game.
You do have an inkling. Don't give it away yet.
Of course not.
Don't give it away yet. All righty, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break for the weather, and then we're going to come back. Jake, did you want to bust my chops about the feedback that we're getting? Are you ready for that coming up?
Sure, just got to give you a couple heads up.
Okay, and then don't forget we need to do the Francesa fact of the day.
By the way,
well.
Bob, I have one hockey story for you.
Oh, go ahead. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Guess who's coming back with a podcast?
Who?
Who was just fired, and it was a major story throughout all of Canada in the last week or so.
Oh, good for him, Cherry. I'm going to try and get him on then. But now I can make an announcement. We reached out to Joe Mullen, Hall of Famer, 2 days ago, who I played with his brother, played against him for many years, and he comes. My goalie was his coach, and one of my defensemen played with Joe, and we want our first podhockey.com. We wanted to be Joe and possibly his brother, Brian Mullen, who played for the Rangers.
When I was a kid, yeah.
Because for those of us who grew up in this city and played in the better leagues, the ice hockey league out in Brooklyn, Abe Stark, rinks in Jersey, Sky Rink. There weren't very many. Had to go out to the island and played in the very best roller hockey league on the planet. We all grew up in this little milieu. There's a couple of other little hotbeds out in Queens. There is a hotbed in Chelsea, but of course the West Side. The two big areas were Borough Park in Brooklyn, and the West Side of Manhattan, Yorktown too. These places produced NHL quality players. Mm-hmm. But Joe was the only one at first to crack it. He wasn't even the best Mullen. He had an older brother who was better than all of them. But but that's when hockey had only 6 teams. Even when they went to 12, they looked at New Yorkers like, you can't play hockey. You grew up in the city. And so Joe went undrafted. He's mentioned in the great. Oh, I think I know who this. He's mentioned. We'll take this, but stay right there, caller. He's mentioned in the movie Miracle. Okay, Joe is, because he turned down the Olympic team because his father had just gotten very ill and their apartment burned down in New York, so he took the bonus money and went to play in the minors. But anyway, the first show, podhockey.com, will feature the Mullins and some New York players, some players out of New Jersey that made it, and the first few, Chris Aaron's out on Long Island. We're going to try and get all those New Yorkers that made it first. Let's see who's on the phone before we do the traffic. Good morning, you're on Radio Westchester.
Good morning. This is Tom from Palo.
Why did did you like the plane picture we sent you?
Yeah, but that plane, I saw that plane take off before mine took off.
Did you show that to your wife?
Yeah, Bob, she didn't like that one.
I didn't think
she didn't like that.
She wasn't
didn't like that photo.
She wasn't.
She said that Bob Marrone is not a nice man.
She just figured that out.
She knows what's going on.
Oh, I'm not a nice man. Her husband, who calls this show every day when we're freezing in here and it's raining, calls this show every day. Bob, guess what? It's 80. Bob, guess what? There's a photo shoot of beautiful models on the beach. I'm lying with a pina colada in my hand. Bob, guess what? I'm in a balloon and it's sunny and I'm in the ocean and I just got up and I'm going to go take a nap and read a book. Worse than him?
No, I take the cake on that one.
Well, actually, we were praising you before. Your Islanders, they can't lose. They can't lose.
I know, Bob. I was standing by the luggage rack, or whatever you call that thing, the dolly that your bags come off of it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right, let me connect with the real world. And I looked at it on my phone, and there it was. Isles won again.
And they came from behind to beat the Birds, the Penguins, yes.
15-3-1.
Yep.
And I and my son have attended 2 games this year, and both of them they lost in regulation. 15.
You know what you got to do?
Me in there.
You got to put your son up for adoption. I'm sorry. I'm going to hell.
You know what? That is such a good kid. There'd be people to have him. We took him on the way before we left, and he said to my wife, I overheard him on the phone say, would you like for me to have some dinner prepared for you when you come in? And that is a...
Wait a minute. Your son said this? How old?
My 5-year-old's 25. He is not the typical, what you think of a typical millennial.
Did you hear that, Chris? Wow. I like this kid already, and he's a hockey fan. What a perfect son. Does he skate? Does he play?
No, never played hockey. I don't know why. I mean, he got into the game with me back in when he was he was about 7, 8 years old. I introduced him to the game of hockey. But for whatever reason, he didn't get up on skates.
Oh, we got to get him on skates. Tell him to get some skates. He can start with quads. We'll bring him to inlines or quads. We'll teach him how to skate roller, and then see if he wants a chance for ice.
You would have to teach him. You know how to skate. I'm not. I can get by, but
well, one of the secrets is I always
up in the air balloon. I got by, but
no, I always start teaching people on a rug. And I push them and shake them and make them move their legs. What people tend to do when they learn how to skate is they think their feet are like stuck in cement, and they don't realize that how
I'll ask him if he wants to do that, and if you'd be kind enough to.
Oh God, I love teaching skating. It's a lot of fun, and there are basics. But so you wanted to brag, and I know that was a mean picture to send you, but you earned it. And folks, if you're listening, there was a famous crash in 1977 of a in San Diego of a 727 on fire going into the ground. That's not funny.
I think my pilot on JetBlue yesterday was the same guy that was commanding the boat when I was parasailing, because about, I don't know, maybe half hour from our destination.
Yeah.
And we were still at our maximum elevation, like 38,000.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this guy dropped. I didn't even notice that the plane was on like a 45-degree angle. And we were bumping and rocking. It wasn't a very pleasant journey back home.
He probably hit some wind and had to get out of that altitude. That's all. He got out of it quickly. That's all.
Yeah. Then I extra have more room in my seat. And, I mean, God love the woman next to me, but she probably weighed about 340 pounds.
Wow. Yeah, that's rough when that happens.
I was like, no elbow room at all, Bob.
Did you have a screaming baby on the plane?
Those all the way, only in the beginning, it was in the beginning.
See, because I have this very dark humor about that. They ought to have these little cushioned overhead racks where you just throw the baby in there when it's screaming. And if it keeps screaming in there, then you hit the eject button. But
Bob, I was on a flight about a year ago where there was a therapy dog. And the therapy dog needed some kind of therapy dog himself. There's a dog barked for about 20 minutes straight. But the dog was like in the aisle next to us, and I said, "Like, this is a therapy dog, and the dog is having like emotional issues."
You have a very interesting life. Chris wants to know, not me, of course. What were you doing sitting next to this other woman when you were traveling with your wife? I'll ask him, Chris.
There's more than one seat on the plane,
Was she on the other side of Miss Muffin?
It was three seats on each side of the aisle. And then 3 open seats. There were 3 seats in the extra room area, and I bought 2 of them. And when I got on, the woman she was sandwiched in the middle seat between 2 other people that she was traveling with, that both probably were about the same body size, right? And all of a sudden, I saw her get up, and I thought she was going to get something out of her overhead rack.
Yeah,
and then
it's probably a sandwich up there.
Popped down right next to me because it was an open seat, and it was a elbow aisle seat. And I was like, oh, no, 4 hours, now I got to sit. Like, you know what I mean, right? It's not. But anyway, she was a pleasant lady.
No, I remember the last time I flied, some guy was sitting next to me, and he has a giant bag of Doritos. I mean, the bag the size of Chris, huge. And if Doritos smell like feet, that's the only thing I don't. Doritos taste good, but they smell like dirt, like stinky feet. And I'm trying to sleep, and I crunch, 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 crunch. And I wanted to tell the guy, you'd fit in your seat better if you'd leave those things in the overhead rack. But anyway,
the first row is right near the bath.
Say that again, brother.
About a half an hour into the ride back home. I don't know what went on in that bathroom.
Yeah, go easy with this one. Yeah, that's.
You ever get a face plant into a diaper?
Yeah. You just reminded me. Do you know the last time I broke my nose in hockey? I don't like it. I don't like admitting this, but it wasn't on the rink. Do you know what happened? You know,
No.
in the dressing room, there's always bags. You know, hockey bags, and I trip over the hockey bag, and I'm about to smash into the bench. First, for those of you who are looking like this, but I got my hands out, and I said, "Oh, saved!" And I turned around, and the stick rack fell on my nose. So. Yeah, it's what happens. All right, listen, Thomas, we have to do the weather. Welcome home. Thank you for calling from Aruba. And remember what paybacks are, my friend.
Oh, I take care.
I'm gonna-
Football picks from Jake.
Oh, Jake is doing his studying, but we're going to bring him in right now. He's been doing some research of feedback we're getting on the show. It should be very interesting. We're also going to have his Francesa fact of the day coming up in about 60 seconds after Chris does the weather. Thank you very much for the call.
And Bob, your Dominic's Fine Cigars. I know Dominic's Fine Cigars because he also had memorabilia. And my eldest son, who's 33, I used to take him when he was about 5 or 6 to buy baseball cards and stuff, and it was Dominic that I bought him from. Good man. Good
Okay.
man, Dominic.
All right. I'll let Jake know. Thank you very, very much.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. That was, of course, Tom from Pelham, also Tom from Aruba. I'm going somewhere in February, and then I'm going to call him. Jake, he has been patronizing Dominic's Cigars, so that's a good thing.
Really?
Thomas has. Yes, take a seat, Jake. All right, read the intro and answer the letter. I like you and answer the normal listener. Okay. Intro. Okay, here it is. Listener mail. Our voluminous listener mail is overflowing, so I thought I'd take a minute or two to answer it. But first, I forgot I got to do the traffic. The weather. All right, it's weather time, Chris.
It is 38 degrees along the Sound Shore. Today, there will be possible sprinkles or even some flurries. 45 degrees is the high tonight. Clear mid-30s. Tomorrow, sunny and 50. Friday, showers. Temperatures in the mid-50s. And this weather report is brought to you by, exclusively, United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. And we're supported at the top of the hour by the plug-in virtual reality. People remember after our grand opening, we'll be giving free samples. You can come in here and experience virtual reality for yourself. You'll want to get it for your next party or event. Dominic's Fine Cigars, the law firm of Payne & Con, Aging Issues Management, and also by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. And we have a lot of things to go over with Jake Schaefer, of course. He from Jake's Picks of the Week. But he's done a little production for us here, and he has me prepared. He's shaking his head at this, and I got to do this right. Okay. Our voluminous listener mail is overflowing, so I thought I'd take a minute or two to answer some over the air. But, Jake, this is letter number 1. Your mic is on. I just turned myself off, which I wouldn't want to do that. Do you have those vibrating things? Sorry. All right. Dear Mr. Marrone, you are my third favorite. This is not good. My third favorite broadcaster in all of Westchester County. God, I hope it's the two beautiful women on News 12. I want to just like you. I want to be just like you, assuming the two I rank ahead of you die. What advice would you give an aspiring broadcaster who holds you in such high regard? Love, Scooter in Mount Vernon. Okay, what advice would I give? The most important thing is you got to want to work hard, do a lot of research, but get an internship somewhere. Get an internship right here. We're going to be doing that shortly, too. One of the businesses we haven't talked about, and someone who interns here gets this for free, is we have another subsidiary, which we haven't started promoting yet, called the On Air Academy. And we will be teaching people the radio based on my experience running Merrill's Training School, and I used to teach for the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. But if someone interns here, they'll get that for free. So, but the most important thing is to do your research, to prepare. I can't overestimate. In fact, I'm always arguing, Jake, with my partners in this endeavor. Did you call thus and such today? I said, I've been preparing for the last 4 hours. Do you think I know about these hearings because I don't read the transcripts? But really, I want to thank. I dropped that. Could you get that for me, Chris?
That was Scooter and I think Mount Vernon.
Thank you, Scooter and Mount Vernon. Thank you very much. I hope you're listening in. But really, give us a call. In fact, what I want you to do is email us at bob@radiowestchester.com. And if you really want to be an aspiring broadcaster, and the other thing is, it's like anything else, writing, talk about what you know. And if you have to talk about something you don't know, do the research. Here's letter number 2. Long-time listener, first-time writer. Is it just me, or are you trapped in your studio nonstop for 4 hours, filling up on coffee, energy drinks, and God knows what? Aren't you the least bit concerned about your kidneys? Worried, sick. Agnes from Larchmont. I get that a lot. Actually, because I think the expression that gets used is we've been opening this radio station in chapters, which is to say, first of all, you need the vessel. We had to build this wonderful studio, and it has been done by people smarter and better and more gifted at that than I. Second is to build the ability to record and then re-podcast, which we just started doing now. And third is then to incorporate that into doing breaks. But you see, we don't have anything to sell if we don't have content. So we've got about a month and a half of shows, and now we have content. So the next part will be, we have a lot of interested advertisers, but we got to be able to record their commercials. And I just thought we'd give you a fair answer for that. And we're kind of proud of this. So now we have something to sell.
If I could just chime in.
Yeah,
for
please
a second,
do. I wanted you to. And
I'd just
by
like
the way,
to-
but one more thing about my kidneys, Agnes, I'm actually pretty good, but these guys will tell you I run right out of here right after the show. Haven't had a problem with that. I have one energy drink and one coffee, and but thank you. But I won't always be here every single moment. We'll have better breaks coming up, and we have to figure out what visual we want to put up when I go on a break. It'll probably be Chris, but once if you're looking at Chris or Jake, I warn you to don't eat breakfast yet. Yes.
No, to Agnes, I share your dread for Bob's kidneys. I actually started a GoFundMe.
For my transplant.
It's called www.savebobsravagekidneys.com. Now, what this GoFundMe pays for is a round-trip ticket to Iran.
What?
Iran is the only country in the world where it is legal to sell a human kidney. The government registers buyers and sellers and matches them at a fixed price of $4,600. So the GoFundMe has a target of $10,000, $1,200 for the round-trip airline, $4,600 for the kidney, and a little extra for the joy that Bob brings us. So www.bobsravagekidneys.com.
What, Chris? What have you got to say?
To Agnes, I want to assuage your fears. Let's say Bob has too many energy drinks, too much coffee, and he dies. That's kind of a win-win.
Joy to the world.
Yeah.
But thank you, Agnes, for listening in all the way in Larchmont.
No, but thank you, Agnes. But the thing is, I like that. I'm going to Iran to get a new kidney. No, my kidneys have actually been pretty good. Now, like many people my age, I take a blood pressure medication, and one part of it is a diuretic. So I'm very careful not to drink too much. I have my one energy drink, and people ask me why I do that. When it's real cold, it'll just be coffee. And people hate that I do this, but I've done my research on them, and this one doesn't have anything other than anything too nasty in it. It's just my quick caffeine
Agnes
fix.
must be watching it on the YouTube.
Yeah,
So
maybe I should get these people
keeping-
to sponsor.
By the way-
track of what you're drinking.
Can I get you another energy drink?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Coffee, yes, but okay. Here's the next one. Oh, would you answer
That was it for today's mailbag.
Just two. No, well, I get all kinds of interesting things, and I really appreciated people who've been listening to the show. This morning, we got an email from the Netherlands. Someone was eating lunch in the Netherlands who had interned with me at another station. And again, in these chapters that we're unveiling, Jake, we'll be getting a report from a couple of times a week from Europe. On how big concerned about for people who've never traveled around the world. Now, you've traveled all over the United States as a comedian. Did you travel outside the U.S.?
No.
Okay, but that's a gift too. Even traveling all around the country, you get different perspectives. But when you travel in other countries, you get a very different perspective. You lose forever. Although you still get back to America-centric, but you lose forever this notion that the United States is the center of the universe. You realize how we came from Europe, and you realize I would say most impressively, the power of Asia is palpable. Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, China, mainland China, Australia, vibrant economies, culturally inquisitive. And my favorite newspaper when I was traveling was the South China Morning Post. Great paper, great perspective. So it just changes your whole mindset. You go to Europe and you go to a place like Italy and you realize that they've been at this for a couple of thousand years. The churches, the buildings, the people. My favorite place, though, you didn't ask, outside the United States, though, was Japan. If you are in Tokyo, and when you go there, you expect to see, I don't know what the hell I thought I was going to see, but, all pagodas and stuff. Well, taking the TCAT bus, because you can't afford cab. I mean, you can, your business will pay for it, but it's hundreds of dollars. You just take the TCAT bus. And on its way in from the airport, you pass the same kind of neighborhoods that when you're coming in from Queens. When you're coming from like Kennedy. And it's like, oh, I know this. And then you look at the signs, and this was in the mid-'90s. You own every one of the things that they signed. Toyota, Honda, Nikko cameras, Panasonic. So right away you're at home. And then you get into downtown Tokyo. And I'm talking about the older section is quaint and beautiful, and where everything's in kanji, and the signs. You have signs that are perpendicular because of the way kanji's written, and then you have signs that are horizontal with English on them, and it hits you that part is different and the culture's different. But in downtown Tokyo, you can film a New York movie there. The buildings look the same, and I don't know what I expected. The buildings look exactly the same, and the people look the same. You got to squint a little bit because obviously their facial features are a little different. But in terms of suits and dress, and it just looks like New York. It could be New York with one huge difference, and it's not that their eye features are different. It's that there could be 1,000 people at a light, and they actually wait for it. And there could be no cars coming. So you'll be there as an idiot American. I'm standing there, and you go, oh, there's no cars coming. So I start going out, and oh, I'm sorry, But that, and the only thing about Europe and Asia, and this is all about the way we Americans are, and I'm actually proud of this. It's what makes us Americans. And I proved it to my daughter one day. I took her on a trip with me to Asia and the UK. We made the cop skip and jump and stuff. As I was explaining to her how we Americans, when last time you bought something that you had to build, did you look at the directions, Jake?
Of course not.
No, you, Chris?
No.
Well, they do. And they'll read the directions and do it right. We kind of tough our way through. It's part of our independence. But where you really see it is if you put a sign up to queue. They call it queuing. Everybody knows instead of lining. You put queue here for the next flight. You could do it in the middle of Yankee Stadium and they queue. My daughter didn't believe me one day. I'm going to hell for this, but I think we were in Hong Kong, and I dragged the sign out into the middle of nowhere and said, queue up here for this flight. They lined up. It's a subtle difference, and actually you respect that. And the other thing when you travel in Asia, because it is so intense, and there are so many people traveling in Asia, that you get used to waiting. You absolutely get used to waiting. It's very, very interesting stuff. Let's see I missed this call. Oh, it's a time for Al Tarantino already. So, Jake, before we go to Al Tarantino, we need Mike Francesa's fact of the day.
Before it ceased to exist, the Mike Francesa app cost $2 a month more than the new Disney app, which is incredible. All the content. Have you tried the new Disney Plus? A lot of content, and yet Mike Francesa charged $2 more a month for his content.
That was always the funniest part of that story to me. It's the same as Netflix, for God's sakes.
My goodness, yeah, Netflix. Well, you know what the problem is, though? Now they're killing themselves, those businesses, because if you buy one of those, you buy enough of those apps, you may as well go back to cable. All right, it's time for our next guest, and I'm going to get a lot of abuse from this man if he's been listening. He is the very popular, and the lone Republican in town. He is the very popular city councilman from District 2 out of the election season. He ran unopposed. And before we move on to him, Jake Schaefer, great job. We'll talk to him again before the day is out. He's busy with so many different things. Jake, I like some of these bits we're doing, and we got to talk more about your life as a comedian. I get a couple of texts. Tell us more about Jake. Well, he's not as handsome as... What's that?
Very fascinating.
It's got to be traveling across this whole world. Okay, without further ado, please welcome your city councilman from District 2 here in New Rochelle. I can't pronounce words. Al Tarantino. Good morning, Al.
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's been busy. We're up last night following the school board stuff and all this other stuff going on. We live in interesting times.
Certainly do. There's always something happening.
Oh, you're not kidding. Now, I'm loath because we're supposed to have separation of powers. I'm loath to ask, but I will. Are you in a position to talk about what's going on in the school board yet?
I really, my feeling is very simple, is that, superintendent made a decision. It turned out it's very unpopular with the residents and the students. But I think we need to all take a deep breath and, wait for the outcome. I know when the outcome happens, there are going to be people that are happy and other people that are going to be very angry. So, but we're all basing it upon assumptions and, he said, she said. And I think that we need to, pull together as a community, wait this thing out. I know it's very difficult. I'm a big football fan myself. I played at New Rochelle High School when I was in school. The coach was, basically a god up there at the school.
Was he your coach? Now, wait a minute. We need to back up.
Okay.
People don't. You can't throw me a ball like that and I don't pitch it back. You played football in high school?
Yes, just for a short time.
What position? Short time. Short time. Yes,
I just couldn't make it at the the varsity level. It was very difficult.
Oh, it is difficult. What position?
I was small at the time. Now I'd probably be a lineman, but at that time I wasn't.
Jabba the Hutt, the lineman.
Yeah.
No, but what position did you play? See, I didn't know you were an athlete. I've just known you as a smart businessman.
I was a defensive back. So again. Getting back to the coach, when I was there, it was Lou Ammons who was the coach. It was Paul Ryan, Harold Crocker. I mean, all of these coaches were looked up.
Did they call him Coach Croc?
I don't remember.
Right.
I was out of school by then. But the point is that the coach is revered by many, and it's a tough thing for the students to deal with. I wish the process would go faster. So that it can be drawn to a conclusion. So, again, as far as an opinion, I want to wait and see what the final outcome is, and then we can talk about it. But right now, it's in the hands of the board and the superintendent. Let's see where it plays out.
Okay, being sensible, that's what you're known for. As we move on to things political, again, Al Tarantino from District 2, our guest here on Radio Westchester. You are, look, there's no way to keep the spotlight off you to a certain extent. You are the lone Republican. I think after you, we get to the president in New York. I think you have Tubiello, and there's Tubiello on the board.
Pretty soon I'll be in a museum, next to the dinosaur.
A little museum.
Right.
No, I'm just getting even for all the jokes. I still have that rabbit you sent me once. Anyway, I digress.
It was a lamb.
Oh, that's right. I got to get my animals right. Just shut up, Chris. All right. So, as the lone Republican in many ways, and a popular one at that, in a Democratic city, do you feel any extra responsibility to be the loyal opposition, even though a lot of the things you do that are cooperative with the current administration, you disagree sometimes, you have a different point of view? Are you comfortable, A, playing that role? B, do you feel any extra responsibility being the last one?
Well, as far as responsibility goes, I've always felt the responsibility to the residents of New Rochelle. So, the responsibility is always been there. As far as being the loyal opposition, I feel that, when there's times when it's needed to oppose, I will oppose. But, most of the things that we're doing locally in New Rochelle are not party related. They're basically common sense decisions about whether to build, not to build, whether to tax, not to tax. More police, more fire. Those are the types of things that really you don't put a political label on.
No, although I can't help thinking of Shakespeare. To tax or not to tax? That is the question, and indeed it is. Speaking of that, two lines I'd like to go down. You have a business here in New Rochelle, one of the more popular ones, Town the Jewelers, but nonetheless, retail is taking a beating, and we're all hoping that this new development downtown will result in a demographic that wants to shop and walk more. What is your feeling about our future in that regard?
Well, right now, the future over the next couple of years is not going to, look great to the public. I think that as they continue to buy up properties and tear them down, you're going to lose retailers. You're going to lose service-related businesses. And then when the build-out completes, you will then have people moving in to these new buildings to fill those spaces. But right now, the biggest, and we've talked about this before, is business retention. When a building is sold, where does that business go? I know there are a couple of businesses down near where the old Grants building is, and that whole corner of the block is going to be torn down. And they're having a difficult time finding other locations because the other buildings that are available may also come down, so the landlords, won't give long-term leases. So, it's a problem. We're a victim of our own success right now.
Well, are these new buildings going to have allocated retail space so that as buildings go up, there will be opportunities for people to move in?
Yes, absolutely. The biggest single problem I see with that, and as a landlord downtown and as a retailer, it's sticker shock, because what's happening is in an older building, your rent, you might have been there for quite a few years, your landlord is comfortable with you, your rent is more reasonable. In these new buildings, most of the rents are based upon, in most cases, either triple net leases or all sorts of extras added on for other services that they deliver to you. So the rent may go, theoretically, up $10 a square foot. So that also is playing into what's going on right now. Some of the businesses just can't afford to pay those newer rents. So, we're going to have to maybe talk to some of these building owners, the new buildings, and see if there's some way of them putting a plan together to help these businesses get off the ground and move into their buildings.
Yeah.
Because right now you have a building up to 360 and you have no tenants in the building on the first floor. So maybe we need to find a way of encouraging the developer and retailers or businesses in New Rochelle to move into these buildings.
Maybe there's some way to have like a graduated rent, give them a real good break in years 1 or 2, because
Right, exactly.
That's what I just thought of. You may have a businessman or woman right now that wants to, that needs to move, can't find a place, but in a new building can't afford it.
Right, exactly. And this is the problem we're going to run into going forward. And as more and more buildings come down, you remember they're going to build where the old Chase building is, and there's a whole group of stores to the right and businesses on North Avenue. Those are all disappearing. So, the problem as a retailer that's still down there, my concern is that, when you're an island unto yourself, nobody's going to come down. So it's a concern of mine and a number of other businesses that have been down there for a long time.
But it does seem like it's on the city's radar. The city's not, I don't get the sense that the city, the development commissioner, the mayor, yourselves on the council are avoiding it. I just think, you guys are concerned about it as everyone else. And I get the sense that you have, is there any specific plan?
Well, no, almost every week I'm complaining about it, business retention. I speak to development department, other council members, and they're all aware of it too. The question is, how do you put this together? It's very difficult. A lot of these business owners don't really reach out to anybody. And
you got to reach out to them.
Right, and that's the problem right now, So we need to put a better line of communication together so that we can help them stay in New Rochelle.
Well, some of the, and of course, the thing that you've always been concerned about, and we talk about it every week, but we got to keep it on the front burner so the city knows. Some of the digs in the middle of the street create some traffic nightmares, although nothing as bad as what they've done in Pelham. Yeah, and the reason I bring it up, I know you get calls, but I would just counsel the city. Yesterday was another day that I couldn't get anywhere on Lincoln Avenue to the point of a trip that should have taken me 45 minutes took an hour and a half. Right. And if I could have, I would have driven into City Hall and told them, and it would be totally unfair, this is my feeling, I would have told the mayor, I wouldn't vote for you if you paid me in gold bullion. But yet I know it's not probably his fault. But to let such a main thoroughfare be so congested and have such horribly onerous detours, how much can a city even help? How unfair would I have been to yell at this guy, to choke him with my fingers?
The problem is that the city or the town has very little control over the utilities. We can coordinate with them. We can require them to have police officers working certain corners to make sure the traffic can flow through, but that's about the limit we have. I mean, you're bringing up utilities. Just to let you know, the water company is going to open up Webster Avenue from Mayflower all the way down to Main Street, which is probably a couple of miles. If you drive up Webster, you'll see the markings, the blue markings all over the street. Yeah, I saw them. So there's another example of what a utility has to do to continue to deliver the services that are necessary to the community. So, it's a problem, but we need these services.
No, I know, and that's why I bring it up. I'm bringing it up to demonstrate my own immaturity, but most people are like me. When you're trying to get someplace, you say, my God.
Yeah, absolutely.
I turn left, I turn right, I can't go.
You're in a hurry and you want to get somewhere, yes, that's definitely a problem. But,
yeah, it's necessary. Are you looking forward to the new session coming up? I know we have a budget out there. Are you vetting the budget? What is your take on the budget thus far?
Well, I got some questions which I'll be asking. We're going to be there tonight and work on it. And I would like to see the budget lower than what it is. I'd like to see the increase reduced. But we'll talk about it and see if we can get 4 votes to do that.
Okay, well, listen, Councilman Tarantino, District 2, it is always a pleasure, and I didn't know you were a football defensive. Oh, God, a defensive back.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Long time ago. Yeah. I think the helmet didn't even have a face mask on it when I put the helmet.
Did you actually wear that helmet? Hey, thank you so much. Al Tarantino, District 2, also great sport. Thank you so very much. We will now get ready for our next guest, and we're going to share the traffic with you one more time before we get to the 9 o'clock hour. Here is Chris Conway with your traffic report.
Good morning.
Weather.
Good morning, Bob. It is 38 degrees along the Sound Shore today. We get up to about 45. There will be some sprinkles, possible sprinkles, I should say, or even some flurries. Tonight will be clear in the mid-30s. Tomorrow, sunny, high of 50. Friday, showers, high in the mid-50s. I almost said you almost got me. I almost said traffic, but it's the weather. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. Voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I am Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
He says he's Chris Conway. We're not quite sure. This upcoming interview is supported by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic's Fine Cigars, a licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located at 204 Boston Post Road in Larchmont, and we expect to hear from Sean Patterson Howard momentarily. Now, Sean Patterson Howard, for those of you who do not live in Mount Vernon, Sean Patterson Howard is the mayor-elect of that fair city. Has her hands full after all the issues that have happened there in the last couple of years. Now, 2 things we need to ask her about. One is a budget, And there she. How did I turn my head away for 6 seconds, and that's what happens. So she'll call back. She knows the drill. She has two issues that are immediately on her plate. We saw in the newspaper yesterday or 2 days ago, she met with the mayor, the acting mayor, and he, let me be sure to get this right now. He and she are looking at the budget, and she has set some money aside. Okay, there she is. Set some money aside for, we'll be right with you, Mayor-elect. Set some money aside for a chief of staff, which is something that she said right in these very airwaves, and when she wanted to set up a much more business-like infrastructure and management structure in her city. And also when she was sitting with the mayor, we saw that they were both very concerned about the fact that New York City may be relocating individuals to their town. Without further ado, please welcome the mayor-elect of Mount Vernon, Sean Patterson Howard. Good morning, Mayor-elect. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Pretty well. You're already engaged. We see you at City Hall. We saw you in the newspaper. We saw you on television. They're not even paying you, and you're at it. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. How's it going this morning?
Oh, it's been busy. You know, here we have in New Rochelle, we have all our excitement over the school system. We have what's going on in Washington. And, of course, we've been covering and continue to cover your city closely. Let's talk about the budget, and kudos that you spoke with the mayor. You said right here, and you've delivered on one of your early promises, I want a chief of staff. And you got to budget it.
Well, yeah, definitely. The budget just came out yesterday. I did not get a copy of it until late last night, and I started combing through it. So, you know, there are definitely some major concerns that I have with the budget.
I would think.
And the fidelity with it. And, you know, I'm not going to detail those on the air because I have not had an opportunity to discuss my concerns with Acting Mayor Wallace, the Comptroller, and the Council, you know, but that is something that I will be sitting down with them after I continue to comb through the budget and analyze it and have those discussions.
Mayor-elect, you used the word fidelity, which, of course, perked my newsman ears up a bit, but more importantly than that, does the budget have to be approved before you take office, or will you have the final say?
Well, I mean, that is definitely up to the Board of Estimate. I don't have a vote on that body right now. So, you know, look, the budget literally just came out yesterday. It's usually out in September, and you have a few weeks for the council, the comptroller, and the mayor to go back and forth and look at it. It has to be also vetted again by the different commissioners, and I am having my meetings on a daily basis now with the commissioners. I'm meeting with each of the departments pretty in depth. I have not had an opportunity to discuss the budget with them because they had not seen it. I had not seen it. And so now that will be a part of our discussions to ensure that some of the concerns that have been lingering have been addressed. We're not looking to inflate the expenses of the budget, but at the same time, we're not looking to cut positions potentially out of the police department that currently exist. The devil is in the details. And like I said, I just started going through the budget, and, you know, the devil is definitely running loudly through those pages.
I would imagine so. Now, also, the other day, you were with the mayor, I guess, discussing this issue of the people that are being sent to Mount Vernon and other cities, your city, Yonkers, White Plains.
As far as Hawaii.
Yeah, as far as Hawaii, I saw that. I want to get on that gravy train. But Hawaii, elsewhere up in New York State, but you only get a year's worth of payment for them. Number one, does the city have a choice in that? Do you have to acquiesce?
Well, these are housing choice vouchers. They're kind of doing, you know, like a Section 8 type of voucher that lasts for a year. So as I begin to dig a little bit further into it, these are working class people. Unfortunately, the news cap that came out the other day showed people under highways and people in tents. These are not the people that are receiving these subsidies to move into other communities. These are people who are, short of rent and who are living precariously on the brink of homelessness. These are people who are paying rent right now to live in homeless shelters. Here in Westchester, you have people who are living in homeless shelters who are paying. They don't have the money to pay the full freight to live there, but they don't have enough to live in the community. So you can have someone living in a homeless shelter expending over $1,000 a month because they have to pay a share, and that's something that people don't understand. We have a lot of people, Mount Vernon, Westchester, the number of senior citizens that are being evicted from their apartments and their homes because they cannot keep up, because their income has not kept up with the cost of living and the rise of cost of housing, are a Social Security check or a paycheck away from becoming homeless. And so, when we've traditionally thought of the homeless as being, and I don't like to use this word, but this is the way people visualize them, is some vagrant who is mentally ill, chemically addicted, who's living under a bridge. That's not this group of people. That's not this group of people. These are working families who have not been able to keep up with the cost of living. For years at the Y in Yonkers, we have a soup kitchen, for lack of a better word. Mm-hmm. We called it the community dining program. And when we started it, some of the people we saw come in, about 25% of the people that we saw come in were mothers with children. Who were trying to utilize the community dining program as a way to save money so they could put it towards rent or Con Ed or, other utilities or clothes for their kids. As the program went on, we saw more seniors and more mothers, working mothers with children. So the face of hunger and the face of homelessness is different than what we imagine it to be.
Absolutely. But what can a mayor do? A mayor that has the kind of cleanup work that you have to do, the reinstitution of a really good management infrastructure and reporting set of lines. How can you help? What plans do you have or need to be developed?
Regarding the soda program?
Regarding the homeless and the people that can't afford even to be in homeless shelters to some degree.
Yeah, well, when it comes to the program with New York City, I definitely want to reach out to the mayor's office and their commissioner of social services and health and human services and get a full understanding of the criteria they're using and explain that, like they said in their response, that people have a right to choose where they want to live.
Yeah, they did say that.
Yeah, that they have a right to choose. When we give out Section 8 vouchers, people can choose to take that Section 8 voucher and move to North Carolina. And some people do because they can get more bang for their buck. Mm-hmm. But we want to make sure that their problems, New York City's problems, do not become Mount Vernon's problems. We have to make sure that it's not a dumping ground. And it would be respectful for there to be a system, just like there's a system, and I'm not calling them criminals, so please, but when people are in other systems in New York City or in other places in the country, like probation or parole, when someone is moving over and now they're going to be using the resources of your probation and your parole, you're notified. So if you have someone who's using systems in DSS and you are working with them to transfer out of the community, then they need to be in communication with our Westchester County Department of Social Services. So we understand who's coming, what the needs are, and track it. And if those people have more needs than what New York City has helped provide them with, then they need to definitely cover those costs and cover those expenses. As it's been said, this cannot become a drain on our education system. This cannot become a drain on the resources. We are already under-resourced. We cannot take other people's problems New York City is a big community. They are very, very well resourced. And if they don't have the money to take care of their people, they cannot expect that we would have the money to take care of New York City residents either. We have our own homegrown homeless people and people who have mental health, substance abuse challenges, disabilities that we are struggling to take care of in our own community. We cannot just be an open door to receive other people's challenges as they strengthen their community.
Mayor-elect, question regarding linking to the county. You talked about the Department of Social Services in the county. What department in the city of Mount Vernon deals with that? How are you set up to interface with them?
Well, I mean, right now in Mount Vernon, there is no specific department. Years ago, back in 1995, I ran the program, the HOPA program, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, and it expanded and it became, really more housing opportunities for anyone with a disability or people who were struggling. That's why we need to create that Office of Constituent Services. When I left for HOPWA, we had Ms. Atkins, who was in recreation as the second deputy as the deputy commissioner, and she had a lot of experience in human services, so people were funneled to her. Over the years, we've funneled people to people in City Hall who had expertise and relationships in the area of human services, but there was no entry point. If a person in Mount Vernon was struggling to go and get services and get linked back up to more robust county services that were available. And so that's one of the reasons that we said we wanted to create the Office of Constituent Services. So if people came in, there would be a central place to receive them, to track them, to refer them out, not just social services, but if someone called because there was a light out on their block, there needs to be one place where we can kind of deal with incoming complaints and concerns of our residents and appropriately direct them to the proper department in the county and the city.
It is 8:48. We're talking with Shawn Patterson Howard. She's the mayor-elect of Mount Vernon here. We'll be with her right till about 9 o'clock, and Harlan Ullman will join us, and we'll be talking about the impeachment going on in Washington, or the impeachment hearings. You know what's nice, Mayor-elect, is to see and to have discussed some of the issues that the city has and then be able to link them so clearly with this proposed constituent services process that you want to set up. It makes a lot of sense. Now, as you look forward, and based on some of the other conversations that we've had, the budget's in front of you. There are audits that you wanted done. Obviously, a planning department becomes a part of that. The different departments that report straight to the mayor. Some of your concerns about the police department. Have you been allowed yet to look into any of these things, particularly the audits that you have really stressed you want to get done, and into the cop situation, the police department?
Well, I've had an opportunity, like I said, I've begun conversations with the different commissioners, and this is not a half an hour conversation.
No.
I'm meeting with commissioners of the different departments for 3 to 4 hours.
Good.
And that's how they're slotted, so that we can, what are the current initiatives? What are some of the challenges? What are the systems that need to be put in place? What are even your data management and data collection? How are you tracking salaries? How are we dealing with performance reviews? So I've met with the Recreation Department, the Youth Bureau, the Water Department. I've met with, in the Planning Department, I've had meetings in the Planning Department, whether it was land use, grants, the HUD portion, or the community development piece. I spent about 8 hours in the Planning Department because, they take the federal monies in. And so there are departments within the planning department that you had to really parse out and deal with. I will be meeting with the law department today. Tomorrow I'll be meeting with the building department and the police department. So I'm only able to really meet with 1 or 2 departments a day, depending on the size of them, because of the level of conversation that we're looking to have. But also I have to be respectful of the fact that I can't interfere with current city business. Right. I'm not the mayor, so I'm not giving directives and orders. I am trying to really assess where these departments are and get a better bird's eye view into them, their programs, who they're serving, what are the budgeting issues, what are the revenues that are coming in. The Youth Bureau is 85% funded through grants. So only a very small portion of their funding comes from the city. And so oftentimes you don't see the services that our Youth Bureau is providing in the budget because they're not shown. Because they're receiving a lot of outside
one
revenue.
One of my favorite topics. Have you met with the comptroller yet?
With the controller and I met yesterday.
Cool.
I literally hung up from her just about 5 minutes before calling you. And so we have been meeting. Our conversations were very general initially because the budget hadn't come out. She was definitely talking to me about the fact that she wanted me to be involved in the budget and ensuring, that I understood where the revenues were coming from and some of the expenditures. That's so the devil is in the details.
Of course
and
it is.
The budget is what caused me to really kind of come out swinging in February.
I bet. Now, Mayor-elect, you've again. I want to go back to this in regards, of course, the different departments that will report directly to you, such as the Urban Renewal Agency. But in general, are you confident that you're going to be able to get those audits done that you want? I know that there was a difference of opinion, with all due respect to the acting mayor and yourself, him having said that the books were closed and your insistence that books can't be closed until you audit them. Are you comfortable?
I think it's just his understanding of, his understanding, which is different than what accounting principles are. And so, I don't want to throw dirt that way.
No, I know.
But I did meet with our auditors. I met with O'Connor Davies, and so I know where they are right now with the urban renewal audits. They're working on 16, and they're starting to do testing for 17. As while they're working on kind of two at the same time. You can't close one, but they're looking at testing and looking at open items, and they're just trying to gather that information right now. On the water department. The 16 is done. 17, they're waiting on the final report. And once they're able to issue that report and close that, then the water department, in speaking with Commissioner Spruill, is ready and prepared for the auditors to come in and start addressing 18. The IDA, no one knows what's happening. I think the IDA records have been boxed up, put to a side, and waiting for whatever authorities might need to come in and do a forensic audit of those to do that.
Let's go back to that.
There's a lot of suspected criminality in that department, a lot of personal expenditures, shopping trips, travel. That is just more than what we have the capacity to look at right now. That's something critical.
How long has this been known that the IDA has these kinds of problems? And I'm not trying to kick back at the former mayor or the present mayor, but I'm trying to understand, for you to highlight it as perhaps criminality, how long has that been an issue with the IDA?
Well, I know during the election, even prior to June, that certain things came out, thousands and thousands of dollars being spent at Bloomingdale's. Look,
grief.
It's an economic development engine, but it's not a personal fashion engine. So clearly we know that those are not allowed expenses. Some of the travel can be paid for through the IDA, but is this personal travel or is this pleasure travel? Those are not allowable expenses. Again, I don't have all of the detail on that those documents are boxed, and I have not gotten to the IDA. There is no director. There is no board.
I was going to say, there's no board. There's no
disbanded.
Can you back up just a second? If I understand it correctly, there's no board, so there's no finance. Does it have any employees at this time, or is it just?
No.
So it's just a chartered organization with a box of records.
Yes.
Wow.
At this time.
At this time. So you're going to have to get people to work on that board, to volunteer or be. Does the mayor get to appoint that board?
Yes.
Well, that's good, though. That's good for you, I guess. You can start out from scratch. I love the words. Again, being an old Wall Street guy, I love the words forensic audit. Once again, we're talking with the mayor-elect. You can see she's knee-deep. In fact, I'm going to say hip-deep in the uses already. Mayor-elect Sean Patterson Howard of Mount Vernon. Mayor, we saw in the papers and on Facebook as we follow things along, you've got the okay, or at least budget-wise, for a chief of staff. Kudos. Don't back off on that as a former fellow executive. You've got jobs that are going to be coming up, and we saw people posting saying, are these jobs going to be posted? When will they be available? When are you actually going to be in a position to know what jobs you're going to make available and post?
Well, that will continue to be a moving target.
Yeah, I bet.
Like I said, that honestly, it's just not that simple. This is a transition.
I know.
The budget will define some of those things, and the budget is. Look, there's a budget on paper, but this budget has not yet been vetted. It has not been discussed with the different bodies of government. And last year, I think the budget that came out in September, there wasn't a budget that was passed until the end of February.
Yeah,
so we're here in November, and if we kept the same potential schedule, it could take till April, but it won't because the city of Mount Vernon, we can't go through what we went through last year. So we are in the process of finalizing our transition team. I don't want to let the names come out in drips and drabs. We wanted to issue that information, as a full package. We are putting together and finalizing our transition website so that people have a place to go, because that's the challenge. People say, well, you're going to be the mayor in January, but I'm not the mayor yet. And so it's almost, you have to do your transition outside of government.
Thoroughly understand.
I can't have the Human Resources Department vetting the resumes of people, so we have to have them sent to a separate place.
Of course.
And on the transition website will be a portal for people to be able to upload their resumes and send them in for positions that we will be posting, and that is how it's going to happen. There's been other rumors, or this one is coming.
Yeah, look, I've heard that. Yeah, I wanted to give you a chance to address it. Listen, we've got to stop. I'm running out of time, but boy, you are really off and running. I could not wish you more better luck than I do, and success. And we should talk and be sure we give you a regular time every week. Is this a good time? Do you prefer 9 o'clock? When we talk off air, I want to be sure that we set up something regular. You will always have plenty of air here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate your partnership in helping us to get our message out.
Well, continue to do so. Sean Patterson Howard, mayor-elect in the city of Mount Vernon, and she clearly, she may even be up to her shoulders already in the job. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Be well.
Sean Patterson Howard, everyone. Here's my good buddy, Chris Conway, with the traffic.
Maybe
the weather. I got to stop that.
Mix some weather in.
It's an old habit.
It is 38 degrees along the Sound Shore here in New Rochelle. Possible sprinkles or even some flurries for the rest of the day. Highs will get up to the mid-40s. Tonight, clear mid-30s. Tomorrow, sunny and 50 degrees. Friday will be a little warmer than that, mid-50s, but we'll see some showers. And this weather report is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. It's voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I am Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you, Chris. And we're a minute away from our long-form interview that we do each and every day. Today, of course, it is Wednesday, and that means we get to talk with Harlan Ullman. First, this hour is brought to you by our friends at United Hebrew, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. The law firm of Payne & Kahn, Aging Issues Management, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and Dominic Cigars. Each week when we have this man on, we go over the litany of accomplishments and things that he does. What you need to know is you can read his column in the United Press International, UPI. He's a columnist, but that doesn't say enough. He's internationally renowned national security expert. He has his brain, if you will, in the midst, and his person in the midst of state departments, foreign ministers, the military, and international security, if you will, is his specialty. He's been in the Navy. He has been a destroyer commander. He has been a swift boat commander, and also he teaches at some of our military institutions. Please welcome, educational institutions. Please welcome once again the author of, and I always forget to do this, first of all, The Handful of Bullets, about how the world got carved up and how things changed as a result of it, and then after World War I, and his most recent tome, now Anatomy of Failure, How America Loses the Wars It Starts. Harlan, you got to accomplish less things. That's what I figured.
Well, actually, we're in competition this morning with Gordon Sondland, who has just arrived at the House for his hearing.
Yes.
Obviously, on the impeachment business.
Well, what I did want to do is, since you mentioned a couple of weeks ago that you know Mr. Volker very well, and he testified yesterday, and as someone said on, I guess it was NPR when I was doing my postscript yesterday, he managed to, like a very good diplomat, give the Republicans, although he seemed very honest and forthright, but the Republican answers he gave, they liked. The Democratic answers he gave, they liked. What did you think of Mr. Volker's testimony and Mr. Morrison's, and where do you think that leaves us as we head now back to Mr. Sondland today?
I announced in advance that Kurt Volker and I have been friends for a very long time. I have huge respect for him. I thought he was candid, honest, and forthright. He didn't overstate things. He answered with yeses and nos.
Yep.
He was not in a position, as he recognized, to have firsthand knowledge, but he said that the president's behavior was inappropriate. That, to me, was the important issue. He was not closely enough involved with Ambassador Sondland or Rudy Giuliani or the president to be able to have a firsthand view of what's happened. But there's no doubt that he believes that the president did use the influence of withholding payments as a way of gaining information on a political rival, which he deemed was inappropriate. He had no comment as to whether that was an impeachable offense or whether it was one that was worthy of conviction.
Well, you know, what is an impeachable offense? The more research we do, a scholar from New Jersey wrote a piece in one of their papers how impeachment really is uncharted waters. There are no statutes. There are no precedents. There is no specific crime articulated. I mean, there's references to things like bribery, et cetera. But an impeachable offense to be even brought to the article stage is what the Congress thinks it is, and to convict is what the Senate thinks it is. So this is an open-ended thing. Having said that, where do you think we're headed with this whole investigation?
Wherever we're headed, it's going to be bad news. In fact, it's going to be horrible news. There is no doubt in my mind that, according to the law, what the president did was wrong. The question is whether this was impeachable and whether the appropriate punishment is removal from office. Now, my view is that Donald Trump should be removed from office, whether by an election or by the vote of the Senate, for maladministration in the terms of the founding fathers, because I think he has been a horrendous president, and basically he is helping to unravel the fabric of the country. I think he has ruined our foreign policy. Obviously, his supporters violently disagree. But having said that, whether the Democrats can make a compelling enough case or not remains to be seen, and I don't think that they can. I am very critical of the way that Adam Schiff has run this hearing. It seems to me that the basic proposition was, did the president use leverage of withholding arms money to Romania to extract information, political information on a rival? That should have been the sole basis for the hearing, and it should have started with people who had firsthand knowledge, basically Ambassador Sondland, who was critical in this, and then other people who listened on the telephone call or were with Ambassador Sondland in Kiev when he had that conversation with President Trump. I think that they also should have pushed forward much more to demand not only documents from the White House, but also to have the testimony of Rudy Giuliani and to have the testimony of John Bolton, the National Security Advisor.
But they've refused, haven't
Nick Mulvaney, the acting chief of staff.
They've refused to testify, and or have they not? And can they be subpoenaed, and will they show up? What do they know that we don't?
I think the point is that you have to make a greater attempt to do that. The fact that they refuse to show up, send out the U.S. Marshals or the Capitol Police who have powers of arrest. I mean, I would be far more aggressive in this. And obviously, if asked to testify and say, I claim the Fifth Amendment, then you offer them immunity. So then they will be in contempt of Congress for not talking. I mean, I think that there were stronger ways, however politically difficult. I know that Nancy Pelosi was trying to negotiate this very, very important issue delicately, but you have a president who almost in all circumstances has broken the law, has done it in an entirely cavalier manner, disrespecting the law, and I think he has to be held to account. At this stage, I don't know that the House hearings will be able to do that.
Wow. That is a great question. Do you know something that troubles me? And I couldn't wait to ask you about this. Now, you've worn our uniform. You fought in our wars.
Which we lost.
Yes, but you work with the military. Well, here's the...
No, remember that, Bob. We lost Vietnam.
Oh, I know. But you served. And Mr. Vindman, I'm talking about, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. Yeah, Colonel Vindman. He yesterday said he has the Army. He's appealed to the Army to help protect him. And I find this, as an American who's old enough to have lived through the wars that you fought in, going back all the way. I was born in 1950. I've lived through all the great events of the last 50 years. I was appalled that I now live in a country where the president has created an environment where a war hero, a man who wears our uniform, who has even said in front of the Congress that I am apolitical, I support the Constitution and my service and my duty, that he has to worry about his safety. In this,
Bob, when I was going to graduate school, Cambridge in Massachusetts, I used to wear my uniform, and I would be attacked, and I did it purposely. But don't forget that during the Vietnam War, GIs in uniform were often attacked.
Yes.
Certainly they were spit at, so forth and so on.
Yes, and then it was from the left and the attitude that they created. But here we have a president who's sworn to protect the Constitution and who uses the military at every turn to show his bona fides, creating an environment. The president is creating an environment that makes it difficult for a man like this to feel safe.
Look, I agree with you, and I don't want to put this to trivialize the issue, but I think that there's only one crime worthy of the death penalty, and that's bad taste. And for that, Trump deserves multiple sentences.
I got to, Chris, save that clip, man.
It is inconceivable that a president would do what Donald Trump did. That by itself is almost impeachable. And so I agree with you. On the other hand, if the Republicans had been smart, there was an exchange between one congressman, Republican, and Vindman, saying that you're in the uniform, because you're in the military, you see things differently. Is the president in the military? And of course, Vindman said no. And the congressman then pressed forward, saying, "Well, then your standards are different than his." What Vindman should have said was, "But the president is the commander-in-chief, and he is part of the chain of command, and he needs to know better."
Now,
he didn't say that. Of course, it was a lost opportunity. There's a point here, though. You take a lieutenant colonel, which quite frankly is the junior rank in the military.
Yes.
And you can question his judgment. Yeah, he's been a terrific officer for 20 years. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff agrees with that. I have no quibble that he's not anything but brilliant and dedicated. But look, Lieutenant General Mike Flynn got fired from the Defense Intelligence Agency because he was not competent. And so there are ways that one can genuinely test the judgment of people without questioning their patriotism or their integrity. And so I think it's fair to ask the question whether or not Colonel Vindman really had the right judgment to be able to question what he did. I'm not taking a stance.
No,
here.
that's a fair question. Of course it is.
To raise the issue, which was not done. And so your point that the president has already taken steps to endanger not only the colonel but other people, for example, the whistleblower. Does the president not understand it is against the law to disclose the whistleblower? So is Trump not breaking the law by demanding that the whistleblower identity be disclosed?
Well, as you well
There are all
know,
sorts of other issues here that are potentially even more impeachable. However, I think Sondland's testimony today probably is going to be ambiguous. It's going on, or it's about to start momentarily.
Mm-hmm.
We will find out.
well, the president, as you well know, in addition to, in this effect, intimidating witnesses, this is also a guy, I mean, and totally treating the whistleblower law like it's some kind of treason. He's also said that the emoluments clause is phony, and he's not
Of
called
course.
to account by his own party. At some point in time, are we so jaded that no one's going to look back and say that the Republican Party has been timid? Did you read the piece by Tom Friedman about Pompeo?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Sometimes Tom goes over the top.
Yeah, yes, he does. But there was a point to be made there. In fact, that's my question for you. You know a lot of these people, and some of them on a first name basis. The State Department and the military. Now they're loyal soldiers, but they're not being treated, and I mean the generic sense. They're not being treated like the loyal patriots they are at all. They're being demonized when they don't agree with the president. That's troubling.
I lost all respect for Mike Pompeo during the Benghazi hearings.
Oh
When
yeah.
and I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton, by the way, when he ruthlessly and stupidly attacked Clinton. I was then on the advisory board of Supreme Allied Command of Europe. And believe me, it was impossible for anybody to render any military help, probably for 36 hours.
I
to
know
Chris
that.
Stevens, who was the American ambassador who was killed in Benghazi. And so I have no real respect for Pompeo. People say in private he's bright, he's witty, charming. He did graduate first in his class at West Point.
Even Friedman
so
said that.
one would suspect that he has some intellectual abilities. But I think this is outrageous, and quite frankly, I think he ought to resign as Secretary of State.
Yeah. Now, what about
Which he will not.
Now, what about the military? They are usually uber loyal to their, as well they should be, to the people that work for them. Are they not troubled by the way Vindman and perhaps others are being treated?
It goes back to the president's decision to withdraw our troops from Syria without any consultation. That was shattering, especially for the Army and the Marine Corps who fought alongside these people. And so what the president is doing subliminally is eroding the morale of the senior U.S. military, who are now really torn between their sworn obedience to the Constitution and following the orders of a commander-in-chief, in many cases, which could be illegal or immoral or unjust. And I think that there's a huge schism that's being created, and I think the treatment of Lieutenant Colonel Vindman is contributing to that. Now, whether this will just be a very short-term incident that will end with the end of the impeachment hearings, or whether this will have lasting effects, I don't know. But if I were the Secretary of Defense or the service secretaries, I would be really worried about the consequences.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're at the service academies where the midshipmen and the cadets at Navy, Air Force, and Army are told that it's against the rules to lie, cheat, or steal,
Yeah.
or cheat.
Well, that ship sailed.
How do you then say, well, this is what the president has done? The president has run around, paid off porn actresses. Why can't I do that? Why is he held to a different end? It's a very, very, very difficult issue when, on the one hand, honor and truth are important, but then you have a president who treats those with such a cavalier attitude to discredit them. And so this could have long-term effects on the integrity of the military. And quite frankly, I don't think that it will. But at this stage, I would be very, very worried that it could.
Well, certainly. 9:15, we're talking with author, military expert, national security expert Harlan Ullman here in our long-form interview on Radio Westchester. It's 9:15. One of the things that all of this has opened up, almost a separate, specific channel. What the hell has been going on in the Ukraine? What is our relationship with them? And why did Giuliani feel that he could go in and run and isn't this ought to be egregious that any president would run a back channel past his own State Department? What am I missing?
Well, that's President. Look, Richard Nixon had Henry Kissinger open up the back channel to China, and didn't want the State Department within a mile of that because he didn't trust the State Department. So this is not new.
Okay.
What's different here that Henry Kissinger and to some degree Big Brzezinski and Brent Scowcroft all formed back channels during their time as national security advisors. But they were doing that with the instruction of the president in the best interest of the country and in the best interest of our security. Trump was engaging Giuliani to dig up dirt on a political rival. And the fact of the matter is there must be something wrong with Rudy because he can't keep his mouth shut. And how you would want to do anything back channel with somebody who loves the sound of his own voice is inconceivable. But the fundamental difference is presidents can use back channels if it's in the best interest of what they believe the best interest of the country. They cannot do it to commit a crime.
Do you know what does concern me? I mean, something that just flew, and it's related to this issue, and it flew off everybody's radar because of the impeachment hearings. But Roger Stone is going to jail. Roger Stone, Rudy Giuliani, these types of people, Paul Manafort. I always go back to, even though I didn't like the outcome.
Michael Cohen, Michael Flynn, everybody around Trump.
Yes, but I always go back to the election of 2000 when George Bush II and the Republicans won out, and they got James Baker out of mothballs with all his gravitas and all his wisdom and all his quiet strength and confidence. And that created this healthy sheen that President that President Bush enjoyed. Why does not this president get people like that who have more gravitas and serious? Why are we dealing with these people are like skells?
Bob, that I usually say there's no stupid question. That approach is being a silly question.
Well, it is a silly question because it's a silly circumstance.
No, but what serious person wants to work for Donald Trump? Name one. He does not have a really serious cabinet. Give me a break. And people of real stature don't want to come within 100 miles. I mean, you take a look at the formidable Republicans. None of them want to work for Trump. You have people who do want to work for Trump who are highly ambitious, who are at best politically amoral in some cases. But nobody look at the record of people working for Trump, both in the private sector and in government. They are all expendable. There's absolutely no loyalty.
Well,
so that's one of the issues. Second, Trump doesn't need anybody. Trump believes he's the smartest guy in the world. So what do I need to help? I can do it all myself.
But yet
those two factors are why this is happening. It probably goes back to Calvin Coolidge and the South Dakota oil scandals of the 1920s in the Black Hills for a government that I can't say is corrupt, but has had so many people at the highest levels who have been indicted and convicted of crimes.
Okay, let's take it then to its next logical step.
But you asked about Ukraine.
Yes, and that's where I was going.
I think that this is worthy of a longer conversation.
Well, yes, and we need
Ukraine and Kiev have always been center to Russia. Think about the general secretaries who came from Ukraine, such as Khrushchev.
Mm-hmm.
And what's happened after the Soviet Union imploded, Ukraine had all these resources. It had oil and energy. It was the wheat center for the Soviet Union. It has advanced production in rocket engines and all sorts of high technology things. Yet because of the incompetence and corruption, Ukraine has a lower GDP average per person than does Belarus, which is a relatively tiny other country that was part of the Soviet Union. And so there has been inherent corruption. They've had a series of presidents and prime ministers who were doing their best to steal from everybody that they could. And so when you take a look at Ukraine, my Russian friends say we can't do business there because corruption. Now, you overlay that with a strong Russian ethnic population that still wants to be part of Russia, Crimea, in which the Russians had a 99-year lease and had 30,000 or so forces, including their Black Sea Fleet stationed there. And so in 2014, fearful that Ukraine might head towards the European Union, the Russians obviously sent little green men across the border and annexed Crimea. We had taken that at the end, as the end of the post-Cold War world, changing the boundaries. But the Russians had good reasons to do so, even though the way that they did it made certain it would be the worst of all worlds and provoked genuinely a reaction from the West. The notion of democratizing Ukraine, it seems to me, is about as relevant as democratizing Iraq was or Afghanistan. It's not to say you can't have some kind of a democracy, but the country is not ready for the sort of Jeffersonian democracy that you try to impose because of this level of corruption. And so on the one hand, proponents, and there are a lot of people who work with Ukraine who really feel very strongly about so-called saving that country, and the Americans do, want to do their very, very best to help Ukraine. My concern is that I don't know that Ukraine is fixable because of the inherent corruption and then because of the inherent divisions and the fact that for the last 35 years, Ukraine has not been able to make any kind of use of exploiting its resources. So my view would be, let's have a hands-off, let the Ukrainians fix themselves, rather than becoming engaged with another endless war in the Donbass, where people are dying, where we're sending selectively some lethal weaponry such as Javelin anti-tank weapons, but that the war continues. And it's the worst that could possibly happen to Ukraine. But as I said, there are and it's a bipartisan issue, by the way, that the Americans are determined in Congress and in the White House to support the Ukrainians. I think we have to take another look. And in a very general analogy, this is not dissimilar to Vietnam in the fact we were going to pay any price and pay any burden. That didn't work. And I think in this particular case, Ukraine needs to sort out its own problems because I don't think that there's enough aid, time, and money that the United States and Europe can provide to fix the current situation because of the political, social, economic, and cultural differences that divide the country.
Okay, I got a question for you. And this is among my silly questions that I asked the learned Mr. Ullman.
No, you only had one.
No, I got another one. And that is, I'm one of those people that actually believes that Iraq was better off under Saddam, given the givens.
I agree with you.
And similarly, this is a question, though, in this case, not a conclusion. Were they better off, was Kiev and the Ukraine as the country, were they better off being part of Russia?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought, too.
Absolutely.
And so,
been a non-issue
for
all sorts of reasons.
And so here we are. And now how does this actually put, what do you think in terms of, forget now the Biden issue and pushing that. The State Department obviously had a policy to try and help that government try and keep Russia at bay. Were they on a failed mission in your estimate?
Yes, I think so. The United States needs enemies, and we're turning China and Russia into enemies. There was an interview between French President Emmanuel Macron and The Economist last week, and one of the points that Macron made quite correctly was just because the United States sees China and Russia as enemies, why do we have to do that? And they're right. And I think that the way that we're approaching Russia and China, this adversarial global competition, is a huge mistake because we are putting this now down into a we versus they, when in fact both Russia and China and the United States have many, many common interests. And the Trump administration, actually to Trump's credit, you'd be surprised for me to hear this, certainly with Russia, Trump was trying to rearrange the characterization.
I remember you were very encouraged. You were encouraged by that in the beginning, as was I. 925. We're talking about.
He was incapable of execution. That's the problem. And then he goes ahead and picks a fight with China over tariffs, which politically is insanity. And so we have the worst of all worlds. What he wanted to do with Russia has blown up in his face. And what he wanted to do with China was dead wrong, and that's blowing up in both our faces. I was at a conference in Tangier this past week on global instability. There were no official Americans present. In fact, there were only a handful of Americans of the 600 or 800 participants. I write about this in my column today.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the audience was very anti-American, including a number of Palestinians, a very, very strong Palestinian contingent. But there's no doubt that America's image abroad is really, really quite low and getting lower, and that rightly or wrongly we are being accused of many of the bad things that are happening as Mr. Trump disengages from foreign policy. And it was just a reinforcement, even though, as I said, the audience was participants were biased, that America is losing standing. And the problem is we are creating a vacuum, and I'm not sure that Russia or China can fill that vacuum. And even if they did, I'm not sure we would be better off. So I'm extremely pessimistic, Bob, about what's happening internationally because of the absence
of leadership,
cogent
global
and
leadership.
Competent American leadership.
Well, I got another question.
Next month there's going to be a summit, a NATO summit of heads of state and heads of government in London. And I really think that Macron was right, that NATO is suffering from brain death because of the absence of American leadership, because I think Trump still believes NATO is obsolete unless NATO members spend at least 2% of GDP on defense, which is a ludicrous figure or goal, because what you want is a smart defense, and you need to come up with a good defense, and the amount of money that you spend is not relevant, provided you have the right defense. NATO does not have the right defense in my mind, and it doesn't need to spend 2% of GDP to get it. But unfortunately, without American leadership, you've got 29 countries going in different directions.
Boy, Russia's got to be drooling over the failure of, if indeed that happens, of NATO. We're talking with Harlan Ullman. Harlan, you mentioned the Palestinians earlier, 2 days ago. Again, a lot of this other stuff sucks the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah.
But the State Department has now said it's legal to inhabit the West Bank. This is a departure of a 40-year policy, more longer than that, of the United States. And actually, in my long-term view, being the pedestrian of the two of us, it actually in the long term is going to hurt Israel because it's going to become an apartheid state if we don't do something two-state related.
Well, why do you think the State Department chose the time to do this?
Because an election's coming up and the president is
no, because there is an election ongoing in Israel.
Well, that
Benny
too.
Gantz cannot form a government, and this really helps Netanyahu. I mean, this was not an accident. This was done with malice aforethought to support Netanyahu. I was on a panel with two very, very, very well-known Palestinians, Saab Erekat and the former head of the PLO delegation here until it got thrown out of Washington. And they are categorical that the two-state solution and the peace process is dead. In fact, to try to lighten the conversation, I said I was empowered by Jared Kushner.
I was going to ask you.
His deal of the century, and I took a piece of paper out of my pocket, which was blank, showed it to the audience. I said, "Oh my God, there's nothing here."
You know, it's funny. I'm always proud of myself when I'm thinking of something before you say it. I was going to say, well, what about Jared Kushner's great peace plan? No, but even in this, you know, I was wondering if that was a part of it, and your wisdom always appreciated. But doesn't even Netanyahu realize that over the long haul, it's not sustainable?
No.
30, 40 years from now, there'll be a pariah state.
He's a zealot. He's an anti-Arab. He's a racist. Period. No matter what he says, he is opposed to the Arabs having any view. He doesn't want a two-state solution no matter what he says. Actions are far more important than words. And so you're stuck. And if Gantz cannot form a government, God knows what's going to happen there. And by the way, look what's happening in Britain over Brexit.
Yeah.
The debate last night between Corbyn and Johnson proved that the public can't stand either.
And don't trust either.
And how much have we overrated Russia's hand in putting divides in that country the way they did in ours, or have they?
No, I think the Russians have been brilliant, sadly, and I think that they had enough trolls and bots to tip the election, or at least help Dominic Cummings in mobilizing enough people to vote for Brexit. And I think there's good proof of that. Look, the Russians have been doing this since Ivan VI, Ivan the Terrible, in one way or the other, interfering in other states. This is not new.
They're good at it.
And when Lenin took over Russia, turned it into the Soviet Union, active measures. The Russians interfered actively in 1924 with a famous letter that was meant to support labor against the Tories in London, which was a forgery. The Russians have been doing this for almost 100 years, the Russians and Soviets. But by the way, I think I told you the story when I was in Moscow 2 years ago with the foreign minister and the minister of defense talking about active measures. They were both laughing, and I knew why they were laughing, and they knew I knew why they were laughing, because they said, where do you think we got them from? From you. Look what your CIA did in 1940s and 1950s in Greece and Eastern Europe, how they manipulate governments in South America and Latin America. Look what you try to do in Vietnam and Laos. Look at all these secret things that you try to discredit us. Indeed, you were operating out of the Vatican with huge amounts of money as a way to take on us. And they were right.
Well, all right, it's 9:32. We're going to take a quick break for the weather and give you a chance to reset and check the weather and to check your debates now ongoing in the Congress. When we come back, I want to take us back to a couple of issues. The clock is running out, and North Korea is they're telling us that, and we're telling them that everything ends, but nothing's happening. That's number one. And number two, I want to take you back to something. You're probably aware that there's a movie to be released in the UK shortly about the the intelligence officer in the UK that exposed that there were no weapons of mass destruction. And so egregious was her revelation, pardon me, that they tried her, but then they dropped the case. I don't know.
I saw the movie.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to talk about both of those issues because did we know that there were no weapons of mass destruction, number one, and number two, what's going to happen with North Korea, and then we'll take it full around to our full-on foreign policy. When we return with our very special guest, Harlan Ullman. First, we go to the traffic with our good buddy. I did it again. It's amazing. It's like it's 2012 in my brain. Chris Conway will share the weather with you.
I'm also going to do, one day I'm going to do the traffic when you say that.
Well, we're debating whether or not we're going to do it in our more national context now, but go ahead.
It is 38 degrees here in New Rochelle. Rest of the day, possible sprinkles, maybe some flurries, maybe not. Temperatures tonight will be in the mid-30s. It will be clear. Thursday, sunny, 50 degrees. Friday, mid-50s, and possible showers. Weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
It is 9:34. The bottom half of the hour is brought to you by Plug-in Virtual Reality, the law firm of Pena and Khan, the Aging Issues Management Company, of course, their new series of shows, Aging Issues Radio, and Dominic's Fine Cigars. And, of course, United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. And as usual, when we talk to our current guest, we travel the world. We look into, of course, these days, the Ukraine, the old Soviet Union, Russia, China, North Korea, and we're now revisiting North Korea, number one, and then number two, we're going to talk about weapons of mass destruction, and now, in hindsight, were they really there? Please welcome back internationally renowned national security expert Harlan Ullman. So let's go to North Korea first. We threaten each other, but nobody's doing anything.
Yet. It's a mess. I think that Kim Jong-un has taken Donald Trump for a ride. He's outplayed him at every single move. One of the problems was that the Trump goal of complete denuclearization was like flying, being the first man to land on the sun. It simply is not going to work. And the issue here was, how do you possibly just limit North Korea to its current inventory and have some kind of inspection regime? And so I don't know what's going to happen. Making the situation much worse is that the talks between the United States and South Korea over who's going to pay more money for American forces there have broken down, and relations between Japan and South Korea have not been worse since they were at war.
Yeah, you mentioned that last
1905.
week. Hey, but we also read, I guess it was 2 days ago, that we are not going to engage in the usual war games that we do to keep North Korea at bay.
Yep.
Could the South Koreans be very happy about that?
Yeah, I think so. Look, if North Korea wants to attack South, they're going to get killed. They just don't have the wherewithal to do that. And if they were threatening to use nuclear weapons, they would be absolutely destroyed, as the South would be. So I don't think that it's anybody's interest to even consider war. You can threaten, you can do things on the margins. But I think Kim knows that if war were to come, his due date would be measured within minutes.
So other than
I don't think
taking...
that's the issue. But
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But the issue here is how Kim is actually diplomatically being quite deft in taking on the United States. Certainly the Chinese are interested in all this because they can use Kim as a proxy or a paw. And, we're playing the role of the useful idiot in this regard.
Well, I kind of think of North Korea right now vis-a-vis China as like a canary in a cave. Let's see how many chances they can take before the gas kills them. It's kind of interesting.
Now, you were talking about weapons of mass destruction.
Yes, wanted to go
the
there.
whole Iraq War.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that I was a Fox contributor then, and I was probably the only person, certainly the only person on Fox, but one of the few people in America arguing that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction, or if they did, they might be residual biological and chemical weapons, but nothing that was really significant. And everybody was saying, "You're crazy. How do you possibly know?" The fact is, if we really looked hard, we should have known better. When General Tony Zinni was in command of Central Command during one of the many raids, because we were continuously had no-fly zones over Iraq, and we would be bombing them during what was called Desert Fox. There's no doubt that we eliminated whatever residual weapons of mass destruction Iraq had. In fact, it was very funny because I was on Fox that day, and I broke up the commentator by saying, "This is really clever. How did Rupert Murdoch get Tony Zinni to declare the name of the operation after this channel, Desert Fox?" But the point is that we should have known better. But the ideology of George W. Bush and the Bush administration was it didn't make any difference. We were going to change the geostrategic landscape of the greater Middle East by imposing democracy on Iraq. And whether or not they had weapons of mass destruction, they could. And Bush was right. We did change the geostrategic landscape of the greater Middle East, but not for the best.
That's so interesting, that whole issue. Now, what about this woman what was it that she discovered? Because I was listening to a very interesting interview on NPR about her. What did she reveal, and why didn't they continue to prosecute her? And that's always a slippery slope.
Actually, it wasn't a very good movie. And the reason they didn't prosecute her was that they would have had to reveal all sorts of state secrets that they didn't want to do. And she had revealed to the press some of the problems, and the movie was so unimpressive, to be perfectly frank, I don't remember it, Bob.
Oh no, but I heard a review about it. But what about the fact that, because there's a deeper issue here, and we know, and the deeper issue is this, and I certainly don't know the answer, and maybe no one does. How many angels can you put on the head of a pin? When is someone coming out from behind? In her case, the State Secrets Act in her own country. We have our own. When is it okay, if ever, when you take an oath to keep a secret? Like some of the people that did what they did to us, I would say to myself, well, maybe some of it was good, but some of it got people killed. You can't, if you're going to take that kind of oath, maybe you should never talk out of school. Is there any easy answer?
I mean, the problem in that movie, she was with GCHQ.
Yes.
And she was under the control of the Official Secrets Act.
Yes,
and
that's
what
it.
she did do was to release a message from the CIA that was definitive in the fact that it revealed whatever the secret was that she leaked it, and she leaked it to the Guardian, as I recall.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no doubt that she broke the law in so doing. And the problem was that in many cases, prosecution will be far more detrimental to the government because it reveals certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the government decided that it couldn't go forward. And in fact, her defense attorney was brilliant in making the point that they would have to disclose all sorts of material. And so the case was dropped. But it's a very, very difficult issue when you sign an oath.
Yeah.
And the question is, does your oath to the law or your oath to the Constitution supersede? And so in many cases, whistleblowers take extreme risks. Now, the whistleblower, in the case of the Trump Ukrainian business, has already been identified. People know who he is, a relatively junior CIA person, and he is being tarnished by saying he's actually a Democrat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yet everything he said in the account was accurate, even though he wasn't there. And when the president decides that he wants to release the name of a whistleblower,
it's terrible.
That's in contradiction of the law, so change the law. And the problem here is that what Trump is doing is an assault on the legal structure and the basis of democracy in this country. And his defenders refuse to believe that for many reasons. Many of them are self-serving.
We're going to get to that.
We're
going to get to that in a little while. I did a little research on the whistleblower law, and you know what it's very clear about? It's regardless of the motivations. The person could have the most pernicious motivations in the world, but it's the facts that matter. So, and I'm getting tired of Democrats and Republicans both identifying the other as the enemy. Who cares if he's a Democrat? Comey was a Republican and he demonized him. Mueller was a Republican and he demonized him. What good does it? I mean, there's no rules apply to this guy. Sorry. You still there? I lost you. Oh, well, I'm going to have to call him back in that case. Maybe he got fed up with me talking. I don't know. But I'm going to call him back. Let me go. And Chris, talk to people. Say something while I get him back.
Well, even though it's 2019, technology still is not reliable enough to keep two people on a phone line together. Apparently, we will try to get Harlan Ullman back momentarily. Bob is feverishly working the phones to reestablish that connection, and hopefully, in the next moment or so, we will have him back. And it sounds like we do have him, so let's throw it back to Bob.
You can't have a system of checks and balances
unless
you have two legitimate political parties, and we do not right now.
No, we do not, and I like that you picked it right up after my question. Now, we've gone full circle, and we're going to talk a little more about the whistleblowers, but you mentioned earlier, what about people of gravitas? None want to work, but there are some people of import who are very loyal to him, and I'll name some names here. One guy drives me nuts because he used to be a regular guest, and now all he does is carry water for Trump, and that's Michael Goodwin. He used to be a guy of gravitas.
Who?
Michael Goodwin is a New York columnist who
Don't know him.
Okay, he was a centrist for many, many years, and then the Post hired him for Page 3. Anyway, but Lowry, I'm sure you know Rich Lowry. David Nunes, the congressman. Jordan is loyal to a point. Lindsey Graham says he's not even going to watch the hearings. Some of these are not small potatoes. We're talking about the leader of the minority in the Congress. We're talking about an August senator that when he was John McCain's friend was reasonable, and now he's thrown all that away. So the president has some people, but But what is it with these people, and particularly this guy Jordan?
Well,
He's not going to attack them.
actually, with due deference, I don't regard any of them as heavyweights.
Well, that's
I regard them as lightweights. I mean, I happen to like Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham is a very, very charming, good guy. But now that McCain is gone, he's not controllable. And so the things you're saying range from the absurd to the ridiculous.
What about McConnell?
Who?
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell is a formidable guy. And I think at some stage McConnell could turn against the president. The race in Kentucky is going to be a very, very close one, and that will be a determinant factor. But I think McConnell, because he is smart and clever, if there were a secret vote, there's no doubt in my mind that McConnell would vote to get rid of Trump. But he sees the alternative as far worse. And so in a legitimate way, put yourself in McConnell's shoes. Do you want Elizabeth Warren? And the answer is no, I don't want Elizabeth Warren. If I were forced to vote between Trump and Warren, I don't know who I would vote for.
I understand.
And that's where McConnell is, and I don't blame him.
And that's where a lot of the people who side with the president feel, and that's why it's incumbent on the Democrats to get something done that is viable. Having said that, though, the waters of the Beltway, within which you've been known to swim, is there a zeitgeist there? I mean, do even the Republicans off the record know that this president is unhinged?
Yes.
What is it like for them? And how does a Jim Jordan do what he does? The way he treats people, and why do people love that? See, that's why I wanted to take the end of this interview, because there's no way. It's kind of like when we discuss the school problems locally here in New York State, and you always wind up getting to the parents. Well, at the end of the day, what is it that the far left has done? What is it about the incompetence in the Congress that has led to people defending Trump no matter what he does in the face of all that we've discussed?
Well, the House has always been far more volatile than the Senate for many reasons. And it's been far more partisan. This is not new. And so Jordan is simply following in the partisan line. You have a number of Democrats who are equally opposed to Republicans for all sorts of reasons. And the trouble is that if you're going to make an attack, or I should say, if you are going to defend the president, you need to do it in a rational way. But you also have to call the president to account. And simply denying that he did nothing wrong, it seems to me, is a huge mistake. And so what you can argue is, yes, what the president did was wrong. He shouldn't have done it, but this is not impeachable. You know, we can censor the president. We can do other things.
That's why I thought they would go.
But no, because the Democrats are out for blood. They're out for blood. This is a blood sport, and they want to kill politically Trump. And that's why the rationality of the hearings, I mean, the only thing is that the hearings so far are more or less polite. You know, there are moments when they are not, but this is not like the Anita Hill hearing. It's not like the Kavanaugh hearing, et cetera. So there's a modicum of good behavior. But the Democrats are out for blood, and the Republicans have no option except to protect the president. And it's quite easy to say, look, okay, what the president did, he should have done. But the law, well, it's not a very good law. That's an excuse. It's not correct. But that's where we are.
How much of this is payback for A, Benghazi, B, taking a real estate deal in Arkansas to the president's picadillos? How much of it is those investigations now coming back to haunt them?
Absolutely. I mean, this goes on and on and on. And you're very right to point out the early Clinton years with Whitewater and all the other things where the Republicans are out to get the Democrats. As I've noted and you and I have discussed, politics over the last 40 or 50 years have become far, far more vindictive. You know, it started with Vietnam. In 1964, before the Tonkin Gulf incident, 75% of Americans trusted the government. Today, 75% of the Americans have huge distrust for the government. And this plays out in Congress, particularly in the House of Representatives. And so, yes, even though most of the members were never there during Watergate or even 10 years ago, there still is the recollection.
Oh, it's institutional.
Sort of,
It's passed on.
Middle brain recollection, even though people weren't there, of the hostility between the two parties.
Okay, let's go to this place then now. In the midst of these hearings, do they bring up articles? Does it go that far? And does the Senate even try the president? Or do they say there's not enough here, we're not going to try him?
At this stage, Bob, I don't know. The question is whether or not there are other things. The Democrats seem to think the president lied under oath to Mueller.
I saw that.
If they can get Trump's tax records, if you believe Michael Cohen, who was singing to Cy Vance, the New York City district attorney, Trump broke the law in terms of fraudulent tax claims. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. So there's lots of other potential evidence that's lurking here. That the Supreme Court has put a hold on release of the tax records complicates this thing. And if the Supreme Court votes 5-4 or even 6-3 to withhold the taxes, that could really be a further stake that divides this country irreversibly.
Why do you think
if they come out
why do you think
9-0-8-1, no matter, that's fine. But if it's a partisan vote, you now have so politicized the courts. You have a Republican judge in the district here who's withholding all sorts of court cases until December, which one could say is really a political act. But the point is that the suspicion now is that the judiciary has become so partisan, it's no longer legitimate. And if that happens, then we have the third branch of government, which has now become as disreputable as the other two. And I don't know that the country can really tolerate that.
Well, that's why I always bring it back to the people that support the president. Although every time you mentioned, as you did, but Bob, we could have Elizabeth Warren. Then I say, oh my God, because neither is acceptable to most people. But yet, Elizabeth Warren, take her out of the equation. Put in Joe Biden. Put in Michael Bloomberg, whom we don't like. Although his backing off on on some of the other issues the other day kind of hurt him. Oh, by the way, Sunland just said that Mr. Giuliani's request was a quid pro quo. Sunland just testified to that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Anyway, thank you, Jake. The people, a lot of this goes back covering the years that Obama was president, that he was a Muslim, that he was an appeaser, that he was black, that his wife. Do you know, I've had people come up to me because they know I'm a talk show host and actually ask me if the president's wife was a man. There's all that visceral hatred of that president, A, because he was to the left, B, because he was black, C, because he was a Democrat. And I saw that carry into this where it makes them, that everybody's angry. I mean, I'd like to talk to a Republican supporter of the president who wasn't spitting nickels.
You can't. You cannot have a discussion.
Why?
I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I don't know. There are a lot of psychological symptoms, a dislike for the Democrats. Who knows? But the loyalty, as my friend Anthony Scaramucci said, has now become a cult, and Trump is a cult leader. And so members of the cult do not need any rationale. They support the cult no matter what.
Yes, but do they understand? I'm sorry, but I need to ask this. Do they understand that the very flag that they purport to wrap themselves in is about checks and balances, about an independent judiciary? No.
I mean, it's ignored. It's not relevant. The relevance is that Trump is doing a great job as president. We need Trump to clean the swamp. It's what he's doing. He's a refreshing person. You may not like his conduct and so forth, but he's changing America, bringing back the values that we like, and this is non-debatable, non-negotiable.
Okay, we got one more I'm going to throw at you. It's not a wild card either. Again, because of all the air being sucked out of Washington and the country by the hearings, etc. Stephen Miller, the more and more we put this guy under a microscope, what a skell.
Yeah, I agree. Despicable.
How does he get a job like this in the White House? I mean, I guess they had Bannon there, so why not?
Bob, if I knew that, I could probably make a lot of money.
Well,
I just find this White House inconceivable. I mean, it's Oscar Wilde's definition of fox hunting.
Yeah, it really is.
The indescribable in search of the inedible for no good reason.
Hey, you know a good question we ought to ask you with your background, and again, we're in our closing moments with Harlan Ullman, internationally renowned national security expert, author. You'll want to read his column today in United Press International. With all this going on and all that we've discussed today and the country is engaged in discussing now, where are we not looking that we ought to be keeping our eye on the ball for the sake of national security? What are we not even thinking about that we should be thinking about?
The national debt and deficit.
Oh, geez, you're so right. Now that I'm depressed, could you get my rope out, Chris? Oh, God. Oh, God. Hey, listen, you know how much I appreciate what you do and what you bring to the table. In your travels, travel safe, and keep up the good fight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harlan Ullman, and go enjoy the hearings. Harlan Ullman, everybody. We will take our leave. We go to Chris for one last look at the traffic.
And maybe some weather. It is 38 degrees.
What's wrong with me? My brain.
Well, you know what? You can't ask that question 2 minutes before the show ends.
Okay, fine.
We'll talk about that 6:07 tomorrow morning. There's a better time to bring that up.
Die.
38 degrees today. It'll get up to about 45. There will be some precipitation, either sprinkles or flurries, but nothing to worry about too much. Tonight, clear mid-30s. Tomorrow, sunny and 50. Friday, showers, mid-50s. And weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. It's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And I'm Chris Conway for Radio Westchester.
Thank you very much, Chris. We're not letting that issue go. We're also supported today, and we thank our sponsors, the United Hebrew, of course, of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. Aging Issues Management, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Pena and Con, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. We have many guests to thank today. Bob Cox, his wonderful report and thorough report on what's going on in our school district. Of course, we got a call in from the miserable Aruba man, Tom. And Jake, great job today. We continue with his Francesa picks, his Francesa facts, and now letters from listeners. Al Tarantino, thank you so very much. Sean Patterson, Howard, boy, does she have her hands full there, and Harlan Ullman at 9 o'clock. Now, Chris, before we go,
yes.
Now you just heard that interview, right? And it's something I'm always telling people about when they say, "What do I do when I get off the air?" I want to. I get crazy. I can't handle it. Because sometimes my head is like spaghetti trying to hold on to all these little facts and questions. And so it's not a good excuse for me to keep calling it the traffic. But I know at least you understand that sometimes my brain is overloaded.
Yes, sometimes.
This tiny little brain. It's not very big, nor is it very well wired or sophisticated. You knew that too, right?
I was going to just let that comment pass.
You are going to let it pass, weren't you? You have to be nice to me. I'm under the gun here. Look at me in these Klieg lights, which you'll be on next week, by the way. But as we reorganize things to fit you in, but folks, when we get Chris and we get Jake on camera, it's very important that you don't eat anything that is otherwise nauseating. Look at Jake, just keeps reading along, doing his research, preparing bits. And that's another thing that's upcoming as we begin to expand so much. Jake is, now the thing you got to understand about Jake, he's been doing production for us, getting leads to sponsors and working on bits. But Jake was a comedian for 15 years. Wow. And one day we're going to take a 9 o'clock segment and just talk about what his life was like. 15 years out on the stump, all the women he probably had fun with in those hotel rooms out in Podunk, all the drinking. What's that?
My wife will surely be listening.
Oh, we'll get his wife to listen in about that. And we'll try not to mention if there was any overlap. As evil as we might be. We will talk about that as well. So much of that we need to do. So, Chris, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Jake, thank you very much. Folks, tomorrow, let's see. Andy Spano's on tomorrow. That's always a great show with Andy Spano. We'll have a lot to say. He's the one man that early on, Chris, you were in doing your other work, but he called Trump 3 years ago. He said Trump would win, and he said it before
yeah?
anybody else. Yeah, as a regular on our show, the former county executive, and also we're going to ask him about these raises. That's going to be fun tomorrow. And I don't think Andy knew. He was pretty surprised because last week when we talked about that. Also, we're going to ask a 3-term former county executive how he feels about the new 2 terms. We'll have more about the problem with the school district and the very popular coach of the football team. Will he coach Saturday? We'll be looking into that as well. Let me see who's on tomorrow. Oh, and the former mayor of Mount Vernon, Richard Thomas, joins us tomorrow.
One more thing, Bob.
Yes. What are you going to do? What I do?
Just want to beautify the program a little bit.
Oh my God! I'm so sorry. Did we just break some FCC law? I'm not supposed to do anything that scares people. Get your children out of the bed. Anyway, thank you all very much for those of you who are watching. Thank you very much for those of you listening. We'll see you tomorrow at 6:07. Let me see how I want to end it. See, I get to pick the music, and Chris will be doing that eventually. No, I want the opening. I like the opening of the show. We're going to go out with this. This is Radio Westchester, the morning show with Bob Marrone. I am Bob Marrone. As you can see, it's kind of a dull day, but not too bad. We may have a drizzle tonight. I will see you tomorrow. It's been a blast. Thank you so much.